across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There you are. Good afternoon and welcome to Drive Time right here on Talk. Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of news, views and topical debate. I'm your host, Kevin O'Sullivan, and I'll be with you all the way to 7 o'clock. Get involved, get on the phone and call me on 03444991000, or you can WhatsApp voice note me on the same number. And I promise to play your message out. There is one hell of a lot to talk about today, obviously. It is Monday, March the 2nd. Here's what's coming up. How did Britain sink so low? As all-out war erupted in the Middle East, the Ayatollah was killed and the evil Iranian regime teetered on the edge of annihilation. What was Britain's response? A frightened-looking little man resembling a scared fox caught in the headlights, U-turning yet again while droning on about international law. Was Keir Starmer acting like a statesman, trying to keep the UK out of an escalating conflict and by extension keep the British people safe? Or was he skipping to the beat of the Iran-loving Muslim vote and the extremist left-wing backbench Labour MPs who despise America and loathe Donald Trump with a passion? You decide. 03444991000. It is no exaggeration, folks, to say that the Gorton and Denton by-election result has already taken its toll on Britain's foreign policy. Unbelievable. If an enemy fired missiles at, let me ask you this, if an enemy fired missiles at a British RAF base, which indeed Iran did over the weekend, twice, would Winston Churchill have instantly declared that he was sure it was a mistake and that Tehran's mad mullahs didn't really mean it? Because that's what, incredibly, Defence Secretary John Healey maintained in a jaw-dropping TV interview. If our government isn't going to confront the harsh reality, the tough truth that Britain is a target, what chance do we stand? 03444991000. By banning America from using British bases and then characteristically changing his mind, two-tier Keir managed to alienate everyone, lefties and war hawks alike. No wonder Trump says he's sorely disappointed with the straw man desperately clinging on to his disappearing power in number 10. Are you disappointed in Starmer too? 03444991000. In other news, with a sickening inevitability, the massed ranks of Britain-hating left-wingers are raging over Trump and Israel's Operation Epic Fury mission to destroy the most dangerous regime on earth. Zany Zach Polanski, the Green Goblin, who never talks about the environment, demanding that Starmer condemns Trump for allegedly breaking international law during a hysterical appearance on Laura Kuenssberg's BBC show. Zach made it disturbingly clear whose side he's on. Meanwhile, Deputy Green leader Mohsin Ali was at a rally supporting the Ayatollah and his disgusting dictatorship that repressed the long-suffering people of Iran for more than 3 dreadful decades. Analysis and breaking news throughout the show. Stay tuned, folks. Anything could happen. All that and so much more. So don't go anywhere. Stick with me right here, right now on Talk, the home of free speech and common sense. Let's spend Monday afternoon together. Now, very excited to welcome my first guest, as always on a Monday. It's Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott. But on this Monday, I think she's got a story to tell. She's been in Dubai while the bombs rained down. Never thought I'd say that to you, Isabel. Before we get on to the implications of what's happened and Britain's feeble response, Keir Starmer's disgraceful response, in my view, just tell us what it's been like for you this weekend in that lovely city that was suddenly under fire.
Well, I'm glad to say that the bombs haven't been exactly raining down. I mean, it was a shock to find that Dubai was being deliberately targeted on Saturday night. I'm not going to understate that there were moments when it was quite frightening. We all received very late at night a message from the authorities saying that we should take cover there was potentially going to be a missile attack. And the reality is that the Iranians have lobbed a lot of missiles at Dubai, a lot of drones, and the defense systems have held up very well. They have intercepted about 92% of everything that has been thrown in the direction of the UAE, and that's an outstanding record. And mercifully, those projectiles that have evaded the intercept system have caused only minimal damage. Now, that isn't to say that people haven't been pretty freaked out. You know, we don't expect that type of thing to happen in Dubai. It has long been seen as a haven of security and stability in a troubled region. So it did come as a stunning surprise on Saturday. But today it's been sort of eerily normal. It's certainly quieter than usual on the streets, but all the shops are open. People are going to work. There aren't any yachts out. I think they're keeping the boats in at the moment. But generally, a lot of people are just getting on with things. I think there's a sharp divide between residents who feel very loyal towards everything that's good about living in Dubai, and the tourists and, frankly, pretty hysterical influencers, some of whom have scented an opportunity here and are busy posting, frankly, ridiculous stuff about, you know, being terrified in their basement. There's no need for them to be terrified in their basements all day or to be sleeping in their bathrooms.
How was it for you over the weekend? I mean, were you frightened? Was it stressful? Did you get much sleep? How was it?
So it was frightening in that period where we were all instructed to go down to the basement of our apartment building. There were a lot of people milling around in an underground car park, wondering how long we'd be there. We were 3 floors below ground, and yet we could still hear a kind of thudding noise of munitions, whatever's being thrown at Dubai outside. And you know, we had hastily grabbed some belongings, not knowing quite what this was going to be like and how long we might be down there. So we took some supplies. That all turned out to be pretty unnecessary. But in the middle of the night, in the early hours of Sunday morning, there was that small impact on Dubai Airport. And that did feel like it was escalating the whole situation quite dramatically. And at that point, we did, as a precautionary measure, pack large suitcases in case we needed to get out longer term. But we're not for leaving the UAE at this point. You know, we've got to keep the situation under hourly review. But most residents have no thoughts whatsoever of being evacuated. Again, I see these crazy headlines in the UK about mass evacuations. I understand that tourists may want to leave. That is perfectly natural. They didn't come into the UAE expecting this. But for those of us who live here, although we expect Dubai to be safe and stable, and it still feels largely so, we are also conscious that we do live in the Middle East, you know, and whenever I look out over the Arabian Gulf, I know that Iran is just over the water. So, of course, we expect periodic dramas.
Indeed. Well, I wanted to get your personal story, what you've been through over the weekend, but now I'd like to get your thoughts as an esteemed political commentator. Britain's response, I mean, it frankly has been embarrassing. Yesterday, the Prime Minister finally changed his mind, another bloody U-turn. He had previously banned Donald Trump from using British air bases, specifically in Britain and Diego Garcia, the Chagos Islands. Suddenly, yesterday afternoon, he came on the TV looking like a frightened fox in the headlights. He really does look paralysed and scared by all of this, in his little tinny voice, saying that he'd changed his mind and indeed now America would be allowed to use British air bases, and then he went into this kind of circuitous, intricate detail about why. He's obviously been through his international law books and said, well, if we can say we are actually allowing them to attack the storage units where missiles are kept, and indeed the launchers for purely defensive purposes, that would be within international law. And that was clearly what he'd been doing. He'd been looking at his international law books and has come up with a way that he can partially, in a limited way, allow America to use our air bases, but we're not allowing them to use them in a full way. Trump announcing he's extremely disappointed with Keir Starmer, and I would imagine millions of Brits are extremely disappointed with him. He just made a statement to the House of Commons talking about international law and how Britain is not involved in this conflict, and that when Iran fired 2 missiles at our RAF base in Cyprus, he was sure it wasn't after he'd given permission to America to use our air bases. And yesterday, John Healey, the Defence Secretary, went on and referred to those 2 attacks. He thought they were probably a mistake, just an indication that Iran is lashing out in all directions. And he essentially said they surely were not actually targeting a British airbase. So his contention was that, wow, blimey, these missiles are going everywhere, and by accident, 2 have landed on a British RAF airbase in Cyprus. This government, I mean, this is terrifying that they are so... I think they are full of moral cowardice and hopeless in these terrifying times. We need better than this, don't we?
What an absolute international embarrassment this has been. There's no doubt that Britain is involved, and there's no doubt in my mind that Britain should be involved. And it feels to me as if Keir Starmer has got the way he makes judgments completely upside down. What he should be thinking is what is right and what is wrong, not what international law may give him permission to do. International law is supposed to back up what is right. And if international law doesn't back up what's right, well, then international law has clearly got it wrong. And for us to be sort of trying to take some kind of, or for him to be trying to take some kind of sanctimonious, weird, dancing on a hairpin moral high ground here feels wholly inappropriate. You know, our allies are under attack here. I mean, just to name check the UAE, the UAE is an ally of the UK. The UAE would, I think, be very offended by the idea that we wouldn't do anything to help them. And the reality is this conflict matters to everybody. And the prize here is historic. The prize is the toppling of an evil regime that has destabilized the whole of the Middle East for decades, and that is responsible in large part for much of the terror activity around the world. And so how can it not be worth, at this absolute inflection point, throwing our weight behind the brave American forces that are going for this? The stakes are enormously high. We don't need little people on the sidelines kind of going, well, maybe, maybe not.
Yeah.
Oh, you can do a bit
It's incredible. It's incredible, Isabel, that at this point, we, the British people, have no idea where our government stands on this. He's trying to please everybody, you know, please the Americans, please the Muslim vote by not being too nasty about Iran, and so on and so forth. And of course, ending up not pleasing anyone, in fact, infuriating everyone. Let's have a quick reminder of Keir Starmer in action and what he's been saying about this escalating conflict that you're right, we should be foursquare behind America on, but we're not. Take it away, Keir.
The US requested permission to use British bases for that specific and limited defensive purpose because they had the capabilities to do so. Yesterday evening, we took the decision to accept that new request in order to prevent Iran firing missiles across the region, killing innocent civilians, putting British lives at risk and hitting countries that have not been involved. To be clear, the use of British bases is limited to the agreed defensive purposes. We are not joining the US and Israeli offensive strikes. The basis for our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. It is in accordance with international law, and we've produced a summary of our legal advice which clearly sets this out. We will keep the decision under review.
Honestly, that is so pathetic. It's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. Now, Isabel, take a bow. You've just become famous, and I'm lost in admiration because you've been attacked by the most ludicrous man in Britain, the leader of the Lib Dems, Sir Ed Davey, in the House of Commons. Check it out.
We rightly expect our brave armed forces to protect British citizens around the world in crises like this. But that includes tax exiles like Isabel Oakeshott and washed-up old footballers who mock ordinary people who stay in the UK and pay our taxes here. So as we protect them, does the Prime Minister agree it is only right for tax exiles to start paying taxes to fund our armed forces just like the rest of us do?
There he is, the sub-post office master's friend. Your thoughts, Isabel?
I mean, I'm going to take this as a badge of honour.
I'm giving you a badge of honour. I'm very impressed.
What's he like? He's like a talking potato, isn't he, standing up there, you know, having a go at so-called tax exiles. I don't really understand what the point was that he was trying to make, but I think what he was trying to say, I'm guessing the context was, should the British government be organising a mass evacuation of tax exiles? I think that's the point he was trying to make. Well, let me tell him, first of all, most people who live in Dubai, they are non-resident of the UK for tax purposes, continue to pay UK tax on UK earnings and on their assets in the UK. So we continue to be UK taxpayers. We may not pay as much as we did, but we probably still pay an awful lot more than the average person. And so that is a complete misunderstanding of the level of contribution that is still being made by many people. And secondly, by the way, the tax exiles are not asking to be rescued. I don't know anyone that's asking to be rescued. Those evacuation plans are targeted at this point for tourists. And the extremely wealthy people, of which I'm certainly not one, have already left. They already took their private jets.
Also, Isabel, what's he implying? What is he trying to say? That if you're a tax exile, you can die. We're not going to get you out because you ran away as a tax exile. That's just, I mean, as you say, there aren't tax exiles in UAE because it's one of those countries where you still have to pay your British tax. So, but that notwithstanding, you know what he means. He means if you're rich and you've gone to another country, then as far as Ed and the Lib Dems are concerned, you can be killed. You can be bombed. We're not getting you out there. Thanks very much, Ed. Very nice worldview.
Well, I mean, I'm not even going to take it seriously.
How can you take it seriously? It's Ed Davey.
Because in general, I don't want to tempt fate here, but I think most of us that live in Dubai have no intention of leaving unless things get properly dangerous. You know, I don't know anybody that is rushing for the exit. And secondly, those that are trying to get out are paying their own way. So he can get off that lofty high horse of his and start getting real and start getting better informed about why those people have left the country. He should be focusing on bringing their full tax capability back to the UK and asking himself why so many wealthy people have left. And I can tell you that if he's in power, there'll be even further exodus of anyone with any money from the UK.
Exactly right. Isabel, obviously we're going to come back to you throughout the week, maybe later today, but in the meantime, thank you very much and stay safe. I mean that seriously. Isabel Oakeshott, our international editor, who is out there in Dubai in the middle of all this. She's had a pretty stressful weekend, so good to talk to her. What do you think about what she was saying about, and me, about our pathetic Prime Minister. I mean, come on. As I say, here we are. What is it, 48 hours? This is day 3 of this massive, escalating, all-out Middle Eastern war. And we don't really know where our government stands. Do they support America? Do they support Iran? I don't know. Do you? 03444991000. And don't you think we ought to know? Just say something. God almighty. When we come back, we'll discuss just that with author and columnist Jake Wallace-Simons. So stick around.
The Green Party have won the Denton and Gorton by-election. Labour in 3rd place.
Breaking news that Peter Mandelson has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt.
What would Andrew Loney tell them to do?
To come clean, be honest. And if Charles is complicit in this cover-up, which I believe he is, then I think he has to fall on his sword.
When you define sex, what your gender or sex, what you mean is biological sex, and that's a man or woman, what you are physically, not what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
My next guest wrote very eloquently yesterday in the Telegraph about how Keir Starmer just wasn't at the races as the world went to war. Where were we when America and Israel embarked on taking out the most dangerous regime on the face of the earth, as in the Ayatollahs, the late ungreat Ayatollahs' hideous tyranny in Iran. Welcome to the show to author and columnist Jake Wallace-Simons. Hi, Jake.
Hi, good afternoon.
Now, bear with us. I want to ask you a question. How did we get, as a nation, from this...
We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
Of course, Winston Churchill at the outbreak of World War II. How do we get from that to this?
We are not joining the US and Israeli offensive strikes. The basis for our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. It is in accordance with international law, and we've produced a summary of our legal advice, which clearly sets this out. We will keep the decision under review. Mr. Speaker.
Well, Jake, how do you think, as a nation, that we've got from Winston Churchill to Keir Starmer? Keir Starmer's response, as you wrote in your column in The Telegraph, has been absolutely pathetic. I feel embarrassed to be British right now. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's sad, isn't it? It's really sad. We've lost our way as a country. You know, seeing those rousing words from Winston Churchill reminds us of who we used to be and who we should be right now. But we've been steered away from that, and we've been steered to an age of niceism, is the idea I came up with my column this morning in The Telegraph. Nice, it's the sort of morals of the kindergarten. You know, be nice to Johnny and he won't hit you back.
Be kind, be kind, yes.
Yeah, be kind. Yeah, the posters all over the underground. You can't walk along any underground station without being admonished to be kind, as if you're a 2-year-old. That seems to be the only morally acceptable position in our country right now. We're being kind to Islamists. They shout jihad on the streets, but let's not do anything about it. They probably meant inner self-development. We're being kind to the hate preachers, being kind to the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, the terrorist militia of the Iranian regime, which is under attack in Iran, but not banned in Britain. We're being kind to the Ayatollah. He was attacked and killed in his office in Tehran, but his office in London is not only not closed, but it also held a vigil in his memory in London. It feels like we just have lost the ability to call an enemy an enemy. The Iranian regime is the most deplorable, depraved, contemptible and brutal regime that we have seen probably since Nazi Germany, I would say, particularly if you combine it with Russia and China, its close allies. Not only did it kill more than 30,000 people, unarmed people on its streets in just 2 days in January, but it's been removing the uteruses of protesters, it's been removing their organs, it's been injecting them with toxic substances, it's been exporting terrorism all over the Middle East, creating Hezbollah, sponsoring Hamas and other terror groups across the Middle East. It's been menacing British citizens, plotting assassination and kidnap attempts on our shores. It's stabbed an Iranian in West London, an Iranian dissident, for the supposed crime of standing up to the regime. And it wishes us ill. It wishes to bring us down. Yet we haven't taken robust action at home to defend our own people against this regime. And when the Americans and the Israelis are doing the moral thing and taking the hit by pulling this rotten tooth that has been infecting the region for so long, we're staying out of it because of international law. I mean, and sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, what worries me, international law, his big obsession. In fact, as the Middle East erupted over the weekend into all-out war, you see the fallacy, the pointlessness of international law. It's just something people cite when they fancy saying, oh, he's done something wrong, oh, they shouldn't have done that. You know, it is what it is. And in fact, America and Israel, you will find, in terms of the very vague tenets of international law, were within their rights, because if you can say this was a defensive action, we believe Iran posed a threat to American people, to Israeli people, then you are within your rights to launch an attack defensively. So international law can always be all things to all men. It can mean whatever the hell you want it to mean. So Keir Starmer's devotion to this vague concept is just hampering and useless and pathetic and just indicative of his kind of fixation with his own legalistic mind. So there's a problem there. I mean, they took it to such their horror or their terror of maybe offending the Muslim vote, because I do actually believe that foreign policy over this weekend was dictated to some extent by the result in Gorton and Denton. Starmer now feels he has to be even more beholden to the Muslim vote than he was before, and even more left-wing than he was before. So they took this to such an extent. So loath was this useless, gormless government to condemn Iran in the fullest possible terms, that when Iran fired 2 missiles, 2, not 1 but 2, at a British RAF base in Cyprus, John Healey, the Defence Secretary, yesterday went onto the television and said he was sure that was an accident. It was an indication of how they're spraying missiles anywhere. They barely know where they're going. We don't think that was deliberate. What on earth is he talking about?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, for one thing, it's beyond me why so many Muslims aren't able to condemn the Iranian regime. I mean, just because they're Muslims, so what? They're evil. They follow a cultish version of Shia Islam that isn't mainstream in most of the world. Why not condemn them? Why not? They are evil. You have to call evil evil, even if you happen to share the same religion, and some Muslims do, but not enough. When it comes to international law, I think we need to recognise that we don't live under a world government. International law takes the form of individual treaties between nations, and it's been corrupted so badly at the UN that often it stands in the opposite position to morality. So, for example, legally, according to international law, military action needs approval by the Security Council, which of course includes Russia and China on it. And so in 1999, when NATO successfully intervened in Kosovo and prevented the ethnic cleansing of Muslims at the hands of the Serbs, we did so technically illegally because the Security Council, Russia on the Security Council, would have vetoed that. And today, similar, we want to take out Iran because it's evil, and yet Russia and China on the Security Council would veto that, meaning that the only legal recourse we have is self-defense, not anything else. And so, international law is a flawed mechanism. It's corrupted, and often it stands in the way to defend evil regimes rather than to do what's right in the world.
Exactly right. And talking of which, you've got the mass ranks of Britain's lefties, Starmer for one, but of course zany Zach Polanski, the Green Goblin, who never talks about the environment, and also Jeremy Corbyn, of course, Mothin Ali, the deputy Green leader who pitched up at a rally supporting the poor deceased Ayatollah and his dreadful regime. So all of them, right, all of them. So this war was unleashed, and I think, the outcome is going to be difficult to predict, but I think we can all agree it's not a bad thing to take steps to destroy that awful old man, the Ayatollah, and his disgusting regime. It's not a bad thing to do that. Or what could all of these lefties, what was their response? Polanski, Corbyn, Starmer, Hermer, all of them. We think America might have broken the rules. They're like little park keepers working for the council. Oi, get off the grass. It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And it is terrifying that this is the world that our Prime Minister, this little legal-minded Prime Minister, is locked in.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are deep hesitations about this war. It's complicated, it's challenging, and, there are reasonable concerns people have. For example, we're still trying to support Ukraine in its struggle. No thanks to the American president. We are struggling there. We're quite stretched with supporting Ukraine against Putin. There's no guarantee that this will end in regime change in Iran, or if it were, it might end in chaos. There's no guarantee it will lead to a democracy. There are these serious concerns, but that's not the reason why these people are opposing it. The people who are opposing the Iranian war, the loudest, are the people who were the most silent when the Iranian regime was butchering its own citizens on the streets of Iran, the very same, mapped one-to-one. If you look at Jeremy, I can almost not say these names without puking onto my microphone. But Jeremy Corbyn, who's been interviewed by Sky News all across the broadcast media about his opposition to this war, he was previously taking money from the Iranian regime to work for its propaganda television channel, Press TV. He's taken thousands to do that work for their propaganda channel, and he hasn't declared that interest when he's spewing this garbage on British television. Mohsin Ali, who you mentioned earlier, the deputy leader of the Greens, who was at a vigil for the Ayatollah, a protest in favour of the Iranian regime. Just yesterday, he posted on Twitter I'm proudly anti-war. And yet I seem to recall on October the 7th, he was celebrating that on social media. He wasn't anti-terrorism then. He only becomes anti-war now when it's the Iranian regime who are getting it in the neck. These people absolutely disgust me. I can barely speak their names without puking. They're repellent and repugnant, and they're totally at odds. While they declare their virtue and their concern for human rights, actually what they're doing is supporting terrorism.
Yeah, and they hate Britain. There's no doubt about that. They made that very clear over this very dramatic weekend. Jake, great stuff in The Telegraph. Good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. Jake Wallace-Simon's there, author and columnist. Read his stuff in his brilliant columns in The Telegraph. I'm sure he'll be writing a lot this week. Now, next up, we're going to talk to our ace reporter, Samara Gill, who was in Gorton and Denton last week, of course, for that election, the by-election that plunged Starmer into complete crisis, and was with the demonstrators yesterday. Actually, there's a lot around where I lived as well, where the Jewish people and Iranians came together in this explosion of joy that the Iranian regime, the Iranian tyranny, the Ayatollah's hell was hopefully over. I mean, it isn't yet. But killing him was a good starting block. We'll talk to Samara next. Stay where you are.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Samara Gill is in the studio. How you doing, Samara?
I'm good, Kev.
Well, I was going to play. Samara was down at this demonstration last night. There was one down, you know where I live, fairly near Golders Green. There was a massive one down
Finchley,
there.
right?
Yeah, so all over London and probably other areas as well. I don't know. If you have one in your region, let me know. 03444991000. There were these spontaneous demonstrations of joy, explosions of joy, where the Jewish community was coming together with Iranians. The Iranians just thrilled that this old tyrant was finally dead, awful old git, and that hopefully his regime will soon be annihilated. I mean, it isn't yet. We've got to be careful there. They're still spraying missiles all over the place, but there was this coming together of these two communities, hoping against hope that this was the end of what is it now? Since 89 he took over. So
it was 47 years, I think.
47 years of hell in Iran. So
it was. I live very close to the embassy, and I got down there about 20 minutes after they'd announced it, and a lot of people hadn't read the news yet, so I was actually telling them, I was like, he's dead, what do you think?
I know, I saw you. He's dead.
Yeah.
Your reaction, please.
People don't like my tactics, do they? But yeah. No,
right, well, you've got to tell it like it is. Well, listen, let's, before we get to what I want to talk to you about, because I want to talk to Samara about what I think is definitely true, because Samara was last week in Gorton and Denton covering the by-election, which of course saw Labour plunged into third place behind Reform and the triumphant Greens, who won it by a mile. So the Greens winning, far more left-wing than Starmer, even more pro-Muslim than Starmer. It's going to make Starmer more left-wing and even more Islamic in his outlook, even more craven in his desperate pursuit of the Muslim vote, which he's mostly lost to the Greens by the looks of it. So the question we have to ask, given what happened over the weekend, is British foreign policy, already being affected by what happened in Gorton and Denton. I think it is, don't you, Samara?
Yeah, I think it's a question really worth putting to what's going on right now. I mean, this is almost uncharacteristically anti-British, the way that Starmer is acting. I mean, you have got, you know, Gorton and Denton, which is 40% Muslim population, and it's a constituency that we're going to see more and more of in the future. And I do think, I mean, first of all, yes, there was this shocking result for Starmer, but secondly, there was Morgan McSweeney is not there to direct Starmer in any way. And you can see that now from the way that he's completely rudderless, how he's sort of shifting from one position to another, not knowing where he stands. And it's, as you said, you know, we came from Churchill to now this. Someone who won't stand up for the Iranian people. He's got no sort of standing on the international world stage. I mean, just outside the Iranian embassy, there was not one drop of love for Starmer. It was, I love Trump, I love Netanyahu. This is Muslims saying this. Everyone hates Keir Starmer in this situation. He has not protected them.
Well, he's terrified to do what he should do, which is, in my view, to offer unequivocal support to America in this endeavour to get rid of the world's most dangerous regime, the terrorist regime of Iran. He won't offer support to them because he's terrified of the Greens. He's terrified of his own left-wing backbenchers who want a far more pro-Muslim approach to all of this. Meanwhile, he changes his mind at the last moment to allow Trump to use British air bases in a very limited way, purely for defensive style, in a very limited way and all that, within the terms of international law. You know, he does all that to try and appease America, and the net result is he's pleased absolutely no one. The lefties don't like him because he's let Trump use the air bases to a little extent, and the right don't like him because he's not supporting Trump enough. So he's just out on his own. Everybody hates him.
It's a fundamental issue with his leadership here. And, you know, it's really interesting because obviously Labour lost to someone, Zach Polanski, who said that Zionism is racism, which is just a disgusting comment, and wants to make that sort of inbuilt into law. And as you can see, he is now shifting policy in order to appease that voter base. Yeah. And this is threatening our national security on a massive scale. It's quite crazy, the trickle effect of something like a Gorton and Denton by-election, what that can have on international security and policy.
You're right, he's shifting policy, and I'm glad you mentioned Zach Polanski. Zach Polanski, Jeremy Corbyn, Moslin Ali, the deputy Green leader. I mean, I think they're bordering on the edge of treason with the kind of stuff they're coming out with. Zach Polanski, the Green leader, the Green Goblin, the man who never talks about the environment, he went on to Laura Kuenssberg's BBC show over the weekend, and it was I mean, genuinely hysterical performance. I don't mean in a funny way. I mean, he seemed to be suffering from a kind of hysteria, the nonsense he was coming out with, furious about, demanding that Keir Starmer condemned Donald Trump for breaking international... Look at him, have a look at Zach on the Beeb yesterday.
We've seen what I would say is an illegal and unprovoked attack. In fact, Jeremy Bowen, the BBC's own international editor, said this is a war of choice. So we've got a defence secretary saying that diplomacy is the long runway we need, but he won't condemn Donald Trump when he attacks a country and assassinates its leader. That's the law of the jungle. That's an end to international law, and it's quite astounding that we have a Prime Minister that seems to be singularly incapable of standing up to Donald Trump and letting the UK stand on its own 2 feet. And I'm worried we're going to be pulled into another illegal war.
Oh, shut up, shut up, shut up. International law, illegal war. No. We shouldn't be standing up against Trump right now. We should be standing against Iran, right?
Exactly.
What's the matter with him?
All I saw on the weekend was the US flag, the Israeli flag, and the new Iranian flag, such the old one. You know, we're talking about a country that actually gave voting rights to women before Switzerland did. That's what Iran was, and they fell to a jihadi regime. And Trump was able to, you know, symbolically decapitate the biggest jihadi the West has ever seen. And I think that he should be commended for that. And why are we even talking about international law? Think of all the international laws that the Ayatollah broke. I mean, this is madness. And talk about international law as well. I mean, Keir Starmer has still not prescribed the Islamic Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organisation.
And you said in your report, didn't you, that the Ayatollah's office is still officially open in London?
Very much open.
It's time to close it down, folks, isn't it?
The ambassador who represents the Ayatollah is still sitting in London a couple of streets away from us because Keir Starmer hasn't acted on any of this.
Well, he's got the Muslim vote to worry about, don't you understand?
Well, he really does.
This is pathetic, folks.
If anyone thinks, oh, we're being very, you know, crazy here and we're saying we're building up this conspiracy theory, no, these are the facts, and this is him pandering to a vote that he knows he's losing faster than anything else. And this is a very slippery slope we're going to go down with Starmer, especially now that he hasn't got his advisor, which I never thought I'd say anything good about, Morgan McSweeney, but at least he kept him middle ground.
Yeah.
Now he's completely out of control.
Yeah.
Who knows which way he'll go?
It's quite clear that the Islamic tail is wagging the Starmer dog, you know, and as Samara says, his shape-shifting policy is being dictated by the fact that he took a shellacking in Gorton and Denton last week. Polanski's on the rise. He's trying to respond to that. This is endangering Britain. His obsession with the Muslim vote, his obsession with somehow or other regaining the popularity that he's lost at home, is putting us at risk around the world. We should support America, should we not? 0344 499 1000. Next up, we're going to talk to Jack Elsom. He's political editor of The Sun, and we'll talk to a columnist from The Times, Matthew Syed, as well. Samara Gill, thank you so much. Excellent report. Samara Gill there, our ace reporter. Next up, Jack Elsom from The Sun. Stay tuned, folks.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go straight away over to the political editor of The Sun, Jack Elson, who was, like the rest of us, enduring Keir Starmer's speech to the Commons just now. It was an echo, Jack, of what he said yesterday. Basically, I have allowed them to use America to use our air bases, our facilities, but only in a very limited way, stressing we are not involved in this dispute going on, of course, about international law and the need for a de-escalation and negotiation. I mean, you know, to some extent I can understand that outlook, but it just doesn't feel very Churchillian in these terrifying times. I think the nation is looking for a bit more. He seems like a frightened little fox caught in the headlights.
Yeah, and that's the accusation from many Tory MPs just now in the chamber. The fact that an Iranian missile can strike within 800 yards of British personnel on Cyprus, and the British response seems to be we're not going to retaliate at all. Clearly, he's let American jets now strike Iran from RAF Fairford and Diego Garcia. But many Tory MPs, especially in the chamber, were saying, why aren't British jets in the sky? Why aren't they also contributing to this bombing campaign, considering that the mullahs are attacking many of our assets? They're endangering the lives of British citizens in the Middle East. They're endangering the lives of our service personnel over in Cyprus. Starmer clearly risking a fresh row with Donald Trump. Trump said that he's disappointed the fact that initially we didn't appear to back his request to use these British bases. And I think that what it goes to show, Kevin, is that, to use that horrible cliche phrase, Starmer is walking that tightrope between trying to, on the one hand, keep that relationship with Trump, who is very gung-ho about attacking Iran, but also clearly he is petrified of Labour left-wingers in his party who do not want any sort of intervention whatsoever. Many of them still bear the scars of the Iraq War, a period which looms large over the Labour Party. And at the moment, it seems to be that side which is winning the day.
Jack, we're going to come back to you throughout the week, obviously, but time is against us, so thank you very much for that. We'll talk again soon. Jack Elson there, political editor of The Sun. In the studio, I've got Sunday Times columnist Matthew Said. Welcome, Matthew.
Thank you.
Jack Elson just saying that Tory MPs in particular are very upset, saying why is Britain not unequivocally helping America, voicing our support, perhaps offering military support. Why is the Prime Minister going out of his way to say we are not involved? And most incredibly, I don't know if you saw it, but the Defence Secretary John Healey yesterday went onto television to state that although the British airbase in Cyprus had been attacked by 2 missiles fired from Tehran, he was sure that was a mistake, an accident, and in fact it just was proof that Tehran's firing out in all directions and they don't know where the missiles are going to land. That was a direct attack on a British airbase and we are not responding. That seems strange.
Well, no doubt that the British government has acted in an incredibly weak, equivocal way. Yeah. But I think it's worth saying that I would love to give a simple, definitive, unequivocal backing to this. But it's easy to start a war, very difficult to ensure that the aftermath doesn't descend into complete chaos. And if there was a president other than Trump, one of the lessons of the Iraq War, that it was only when H.R. McMaster, one of the American generals, started to work with the clan leaders in Iraq that they unified against the threat from Al-Qaeda in Iraq. What is the planning for the aftermath here? What they sometimes call day 1 or day 2. He says the Iranian people should rise up against the regime. Fantastic. But there are different ethnic groups in Iran. Some of them, by the way, support the regime. There are Persians, there are Arabs, there are Balochs, there are Kurds. Who's to say it won't descend into civil war? What is the planning? What kind of interaction has there been between the Trump administration and the potential groups that need to unify to create what I think people hope will be a Jeffersonian democracy? By the way, and if it does descend into civil war, it won't be thousands, it will be millions of refugees moving west, potentially into Europe. And if some people try and come up against the Revolutionary Guard unarmed, there could be carnage of a kind that makes last month look like child's play. This isn't to say that we want to rid the world of an iniquitous regime.
Yeah.
My father's ancestors come from Iran. I followed the Iran-Iraq war as a youngster, and the child martyrs that the Ayatollahs were persuading to run towards machine gun fire. 20,000 young people killed, the proxies across the region. But one can both believe that it's right to get rid of the regime and say we need to think far more carefully, more strategically, try and build a coalition. There's only 2 countries in this alliance. Those caveats, I think, are worth putting out there.
I agree with you. I mean, it's quite clear that Trump, a month or so ago, when Iran or the Mad Mullahs were busy slaughtering thousands and thousands of their own protesting citizens in the most horrific way, and a lot of us were thinking, go in now, Donald, stop this slaughter. It's quite clear that at that point he was persuaded, no, because if you overturn this regime, the vacuum created could cause unprecedented chaos in the Middle East. In other words, in a way, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. But what happened over the weekend, I think he was persuaded by this geographical fact that the Ayatollah and his cohorts were all in the same place, and was clearly told, strike now.
Well, it seems to me pretty obvious that Iran was not struck because it was an imminent threat. Yeah. It was struck because it was weak. In fact, the opposite of an imminent threat. At this particular moment, the proxies have been decimated. A lot of the capability of the regime had the chance to do it. I understand that. In fact, in some ways, I completely applaud it. I would back it if it was somebody other than Trump, because Trump says he wants regime change. It's not really often that's ever happened from the air
It's
alone.
a long shot.
And by the way, he said in the interaction in Venezuela, he was behind the Venezuelan people, but the regime remained in place. It just gave America the opportunity to get its hands on its oil. And the most important geopolitical issue in the world today is in Europe. It's in our continent, Ukraine. But Trump has withdrawn crucial capabilities, aid, intelligence sharing at key moments. Does he care about the people of Ukraine, about Russia? I think he's more interested in raw material extraction from Ukraine. And so giving wholehearted support, given all those caveats, I think is difficult. So I think the British government's national interest was in backing it. Whatever caveats they have. I'll tell you why, Kevin, because we haven't invested in defence sufficiently. We've free-ridden on the American taxpayers with their effective bankrolling of NATO. I think this was the biggest strategic mistake of Europe in the post-war age. We have to get up close to America. It's just an inevitability, given that we're vulnerable.
That's exactly right. I think we should hitch our wagon to the States. We haven't got long, Matthew, but you talked about the unknown, in other words, what happens. I mean, let's stress that although the Ayatollah and his inner circle have been killed, that regime is still intact, and so the Mad Mullahs continue to rule Iran. So given they are disintegrating, I mean, how do you see this playing out in the next month?
Do you know, I think that if anybody comes on your show, Kevin, and you have great guests, correctly, by the way, because it is a good show, this one excluded, and they tell you that they have clarity over what happens next, they're either lying or deluded. That is one of the most obvious inferences we can draw from wars of this kind. This is a hinge moment in world history. The scope for unintended consequences are vast. Britain should be close to America, but behind closed doors we should be saying as much as we can about all the caveats.
The kind of Blair approach that I'm afraid Starmer is not pursuing. Matthew, come on again very soon. Matthew Syed, columnist for the Sunday Times. Much still to come. Stay tuned, folks.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is the second hour of today's drive time, a very eventful drive time it is too. We are in a state of war, folks. The Middle East is at all-out war. The ramifications are rippling all across the globe, particularly here. In a little while, we will remind you that the migrant crisis continues apace. I can assure you, I have good information down on the south coast. There's going to be some good weather this week. Something like nearly 700 came across last week. I'm told it may be more this week. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, says she's cracking down hard. No, she's not. We'll talk about that in a little while. But also, we'll go across the pond to get the American reaction to Starmer's feeble reaction. The President, Donald Trump, saying that he is very disappointed in Britain, very disappointed in our leader for not supporting him in his endeavour to destroy the most dangerous regime on the face of the earth, as in Iran. So we'll get the American reaction, then a bit of sport at the end of the hour. We will, of course, talk about Fulham's famous victory over Spurs yesterday. I was there. Come on, you whites. Let's go straight over to my first guest, though. He is historian Rafe Heidel-Manku. Hi, Rafe.
Great to be with you.
Good to have you on this very eventful day. Donald Trump is saying that Keir Starmer took far too long to approve the use of British bases for America as they strike Iran. I think we can all agree with that. But what I'd like to ask you is, isn't this extraordinary that here we are on the third day of all-out war in the Middle East, and we still, as a nation, we Brits, we British citizens, don't really know where our government stands. Keir Starmer has been careful, sort of not to condemn America and yet not to support it. He's been careful to not go too harsh in his criticism of the Iranian regime that has fallen, I think because he's worried about the Muslim vote at home. And is droning on about international law. And to be honest with you, at the beginning of the show, Rafe, I played Winston Churchill's famous "We will fight them on the beaches" speech at the beginning of the Second World War. And then I played Keir Starmer going, "We're not actually involved in this. International law has not, but we will not break international law," etc., etc., etc. We look feeble, weak, and indecisive in these difficult times. It's just not good enough, is it?
Feeble, weak, and indecisive is precisely the way to describe Starmer. I used to be a director of the Churchill Centre. I have a bust of the great man behind me. There'll be no busts of Keir Starmer. I can guarantee you that.
Anywhere, ever.
Maybe in the Chamber of Horrors at Madison Court. But the reality is we have a Prime Minister who is being held hostage by his loony left backbenchers, most of whom would be better off in the Green Party, and by his Muslim MPs. And of course, he's also crippled by his status as a lawyer. And he's so beholden to international law on the one hand that he can't see when there are issues of morality trumping international law. Because, yes, by the book, I think it's Article 51 of the UN Charter, a nation has to be in imminent threats of being attacked in order to attack. But there's a lot of evidence here of the moral duty of intervening here, not least the murder of between 30 and 50,000 Iranians, protesters, by this evil regime alone. And even his closest ideological allies, people who are almost as wet as he is, Mark Carney in Canada and Anthony Albanese in Australia, both ardent critics of Trump, they've both signed up to all of this, and they're supporting America. And for Britain, always America's greatest ally in these military ventures, not to take part in these attacks, not to even allow the basis to be used, that's even the lower bar, is absolutely ridiculous. It lowers our standing globally, and it's caused immense damage to our relations with our most important ally, something that Keir Starmer has already expended huge capital on in recent years. All seems to have been just wasted completely over this issue. We have to understand, of course, they've seen what happened in the last by-election, where the Green Party essentially has been able to ally radical Islam with the far left. And I think they are just paranoid that they had lost so many Labour voters over the whole issue of Gaza. They're trying to win them back, and they're just petrified that if they are seen to be allied with Trump and attacking Iran, another tranche of Muslims will leave them.
Yeah, you're right. I think the Gorton and Denton Green shock result last week and the continued pressure that he always receives from his left-wing backbenchers, those two tails are wagging the Starmer dog. He's being dictated to by the result in Gorton and Denton, and by his left-wing MPs who hate Trump and hate America, frankly probably support Iran. So he's in the middle, sort of suddenly last night or yesterday afternoon saying, I have decided to let America use our air bases, but only in a very limited defensive way, pointing out that if we attack their missile storage bases, then that is within international law, his obsession with international law. So he ends up pleasing no one. Trump is very disappointed with him. I think millions of Brits are disappointed with him. If Mark Carney, who despises Trump, and Trump despises Mark Carney. If Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, can stand up and say America has our unequivocal support in its endeavour against the most dangerous regime on earth, Iran, why on earth can't our Prime Minister say that?
Well, you better ask him, because I can't answer that question. I can answer that question, and it's simply that Canada and Australia don't have the numbers of Muslim voters that we do in this country. It's quite simple as that, I would say. Had they faced the same demographic challenges we have from the types of nationalities who've come in, you may find similar debates going on there alone. But as I say, we also have somebody who's not a politician, who is actually a career lawyer and cannot escape. And yes, he's quite, look, I was opposed to the Iraq war from day one. I said if America and Britain invaded Iraq, it would be a violation of international law, and it would give carte blanche for Russia and China to do just the same thing and say, well, you did it, so why can't we? But we're not talking about boots on the ground here. We're talking about air bombardment. What he should have done is he should have joined up with Trump from the very beginning, actually used our own fighter jets should have taken part in all of this, but behind the scenes, behind closed doors, he should have been saying to Trump, look, you guys are amazing at military strikes, but what's the plan? That's the lesson from Libya. That's the lesson from Iraq. What is the plan for the day after? Should we, in my view, America and Britain need to start saying that Reza Pahlavi, the son of the late Shah of Iran, a man who's got huge respect within Iran, is allied very much to Western ideology. He's the man who should come in, and forces of the opposition should coalesce around one person, because nature abhors a vacuum. And then that's the great tragedy of Afghanistan and Iraq and everywhere else. And we need to have the opposition forces come together and rally around somebody. I'd like to see Iran become a monarchy, actually, because monarchies are the strongest and most stable and safe countries in the Middle East. A constitutional monarchy with a democracy underneath it. But Reza Pahlavi has not said he wants to become king, but he's happy to be the means by which you can get a transitionary government into place.
Who knows what's going to happen there, Rafe? Therein lies the problem. Now, the President Trump, has just been speaking. Let's have a quick listen to what he's been saying.
Today, the United States military continues to carry out large-scale combat operations in Iran to eliminate the grave threats posed to America by this terrible terrorist regime. Following our obliteration of Iran's nuclear program in Operation Midnight Hammer a short while ago, we warned Iran not to make any attempt to rebuild at a different location because they were unable to use the ones that we so powerfully blew up, but they ignored those warnings and refused to cease their pursuit of nuclear weapons. In addition, the regime's conventional ballistic missile program was growing rapidly and dramatically, and this posed a very clear, colossal threat to America and our forces stationed overseas. The regime already had missiles capable of hitting Europe and our bases, both local and overseas, and would soon have had missiles capable of reaching our beautiful America.
Now, Rafe, whatever you think about Donald Trump and whatever you think about him and joining forces with Israel to launch that sudden attack overnight on Saturday, Friday and Saturday, compare him, that speech, he's literally just made that speech, to what we saw in the Commons about an hour ago. Have a look at this.
We are not joining the US and Israeli offensive strikes. The basis for our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. It is in accordance with international law, and we've produced a summary of our legal advice, which clearly sets this out. We will keep the decision under review. Mr. Speaker, we are not joining the strikes, but we will continue our defensive actions in the region.
The thing is, Rafe, whatever you think of Trump, he is a powerful man. You know, he's a decisive man. You feel like at least the guy who's running your country, if you're an American, is clear about what he's doing, what he wants to do and what he's going to do. We here in Britain are led by that weird little legal obsessive automaton, you know, who's, I've got to take legal advice on international law. This is not a time for legal advice and international law. This is the time to know what the right thing to do is. He doesn't know. We are being led by an utter weakling, aren't we?
A sheep in sheep's clothing. Dull and vapid and shameful that at a moment when, you know, Britain is trying to reassert itself on the global stage post-Brexit, and it's these moments, you know, we still rank, despite all the terrible military cuts we have, we still rank in the top 5 military powers in the world. There should be a moment where we're flexing that and showing that we can actually stand on our own and be a global power and a global figure. And instead, he is undermining that, undermining us all the time, trying to get us back into the EU, not standing up for what's morally right on the global stage, giving away the Chagos Islands. This is a man who consistently puts foreign interests and the interests of his cronies and lawyers ahead of Britain's own national interests. We can't have any more of it. We're becoming a laughingstock around the world. Limp and feeble as he is, but he's making us seem like that globally too. We need somebody for decisive action. You know, Britain faces on so many fronts now existential crisis. This is one of the darkest moments we have. It used to be.
Let me just ask you this, Rafe. I totally agree with what you're saying, absolutely. But look, over the weekend, Iran fired 2 missiles at a British airbase in Cyprus. Incredibly, the Defence Secretary, John Healey, went onto television yesterday to say he was sure that was a mistake, an accident, because they're just spraying missiles out everywhere, so it was just random. What a load of claptrap. They fired 2 missiles at a British airbase deliberately. One of them hit the damned airbase. The other one mercifully missed. And we as a nation are not going to respond. We're just going to let them do this. This is extraordinary.
Yeah, imagine, you can't imagine Israel doing this, can you? Not retorting to anything like this. I think John Healey actually would like to do what we're talking about and has been forced basically to have this docile position by his prime minister. But yes, and actually the fact that Iran showed its hand. You know, I think the Ayatollah knows that the Iranian regime is actually on its last legs and has basically gone hell for leather. That's why they've attacked Saudi Arabia and Qatar and Bahrain and Dubai and the UAE and Cyprus, and they struck French bases as well. because they're going hell for leather because they know they're near the end. And this just shows you, if they had had a nuclear weapon, I am pretty certain that that nuclear weapon would have been fired this weekend or would have been fired some point soon. And we will be in a very different world right now. That this current last 48 hours has shown us exactly what sort of an end of world times regime Iran is.
Yeah.
It's in everyone's interest that we get rid of it. And this is the golden moment when they've attacked so many countries for all of these nations to collectively get together and wipe the Iranian regime off the face of the earth. And the fact that Starmer isn't willing to rise up to the challenge and the occasion just shows how inadequate and unsuitable he is to lead one of the great nations of this world.
Yeah, I think it's embarrassing. It's humiliating. I feel embarrassed to be British at the moment, and I don't often say that, and that's because of Keir Starmer. Just a quick word before you go, Rafe. Thanks as always for joining us. How do you see this playing out? I mean, it's all very well to attack Iran and to destroy or to kill the Ayatollah and his inner circle. But, and I suppose we can expect the entire regime to collapse fairly soon, or certainly within weeks. What happens then, though? Do we not create a vacuum into which utter chaos pours?
This is a really huge risk. And so, yes, that's the part of Starmer's argument I understand. But we should stand with America. And as I said, behind closed doors, Starmer should be saying, we do need a plan here, because that is the lesson of Libya. That's the lesson of Iraq, not having a plan there. And we don't want to have, terrorists and others take control of the country. But what happens next all depends on how successful this campaign is, because normally you would need ground troops to really have regime change. Doing it from the air is next to nigh impossible. So this can only happen if the Iranian protesters and the Iranian opposition can get their act together, and if they feel confident enough that the American and Israeli bombardments have successfully eliminated Iran's leadership, but also successfully destroyed or weakened the institutions of repression that led to the slaughter of 30 to 50,000 Iranians. Because if that hasn't been dismantled enough, the opposition leaders aren't going to basically be able to topple the regime. So only if that happens, and only if the opposition can actually coalesce around a person or a group of people to actually form a transition. But Trump also needs to be clearer, because yesterday in a 6-minute speech, he said he wanted regime change, and in that same 6 minutes, he also said, but the Venezuelan option will be fine too, just to change the leadership of the regime and have negotiations. That, we need to have clarity. The opposition and the protesters in Iran need to know that Trump isn't going to abandon them, and that he is actually committed to regime change and won't just be happy if they just shuffle the top leadership.
Yeah, absolutely, Rafe. Rafe, fantastic to have you on. Thank you so much. Rafe Heidelmann-Koo, historian, member of the New Culture Forum. So next up, we're going to go just drop the war for a second and talk about the migrant crisis. Channel migrant crossings have hit record levels this year already, and the struggling Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is trying to get the left-wing backbenchers to back her alleged massive crackdown on the foreigners coming across the channel and what happens to this country. Yeah, they want her. She wants them to back her crackdown. Good luck with that, Shabs. 03444 1000. We'll talk about that next. Stay tuned.
The Green Party have won the Denton and Gorton by-election. Labour in third place.
Breaking news that Peter Mandelson has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt.
What would Andrew Loney tell them to do?
To come clean, be honest. And if Charles is complicit in this cover-up, which I believe he is, then I think he has to fall on his sword.
When you define sex, what your gender or sex, what you mean is biological sex, and that's a man or woman, what you are physically, not what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm going to be taking your calls throughout the show. Got one from Robert from Hertfordshire, who I will talk to later. But he says about Iran, he said, no one is playing by international law rules, so why should the UK? Exactly right, Robert. He's exactly right. What is international law? It's all things to all men. You know, it's whatever anybody wants to claim at any given point. You know, if it's Iran saying, oh, you know, we're self-defense, then the international lawyers will say, well, you've broken international law. If it's America saying, oh, well, we've got to defend ourselves, they haven't broken international law. It's a load of shape-shifting cobblers that people like Keir Starmer set their lives by. They make a big mistake in that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Has international law been broken? What was international law broken when America and Israel attacked, bombed Iran over the weekend? Do you care? I don't. I couldn't care less. Was it right? Was it wrong? We can debate that by all means. Was it right for America and Israel to do that? But don't bore me with, did they break international law? Nobody cares. Do you think Mavis in Hartlepool is worried about international law? That is our problem, folks. We have a Prime Minister who's obsessed with something nobody else cares about, as in international law. We found out over the weekend just how brilliant international law is when everybody just started bombing each other just like that all across the Middle East. International law, not worth the paper it's written on, trust me. Now, let's go domestic now. Let's talk about the migrant crisis with the excellent research director at the Centre for Migration Control. Of course, it's our favourite guest, Robert Bates. Hi, Robert.
Afternoon, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
You are our little respite from Iran. So, but I think it's important. Channel crossings, we learned today, have already hit record levels this year, because last week we had way over, nearly, I think it was just about 700 people came across last week. 2 days, 74 one day, 605 the next. That was a little window of good weather. I am told we're going to get, well, it's a very nice day today here in London. We're going to get some very nice weather on the channel this week. I am assured hundreds more will come across this week, and I have no doubt that is true, because this government offers no deterrence, of course, only enticements. Meanwhile, the tough-talking Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, is urging the left-wing Labour backbenchers to back her migration crackdown. Good luck with that, Shabana. And B, she says that this crackdown will go a long way towards solving the migrant crisis. Again, good luck with that. What's going to happen then, Robert, going forward? Because Shabana Mahmood's crackdown's not going to have any effect at all, is it?
No, well, this year will undoubtedly be worse than last year. The Home Secretary herself has even admitted in the last few weeks that we're not expecting to see any sense of improvement in 2026. And, all the indicators already suggest that the numbers are going to be higher. And, you say hundreds could be coming across the next few weeks. I think that's very likely. We know there are thousands in northern France just waiting to make the crossing. But when it comes to the plans that have been set out today, I mean, they are effectively a reheating of an announcement from a few months ago. But I don't really think actually what's being offered here is in any way a deterrent. What we're seeing really actually is that illegal migrants, people who come into the country illegally, are still going to be given a pathway to settlement. They're still going to be able to claim asylum, which is a huge departure from what the Conservatives were trying to do at the end of their last government, where they were effectively saying, if you come in on a small boat, there's no chance of you ever having an asylum claim heard, and you won't ever be on a pathway to citizenship. So it's an effective amnesty which is being offered on that front. But then, of course, we also need to look at the huge impending problem, which hasn't really been defined yet, but could very, very potentially see tens of thousands more people being brought in by the government, which is the creation of safe and legal routes. And you look at the chaos, for instance, in the Middle East at the moment, and you'll know there's people in the Home Office right now thinking, yes, this feels like a good opportunity to start creating one of those safe and legal routes where thousands of people will come in. They'll have to be put up at the taxpayers' expense. There'll be very, very little likelihood of us then removing them from the country once Iran settles down or the Middle East settles down, and they will be a long-term cost on the taxpayer.
It's ridiculous. Shabana Mahmood's tough crackdown entails that people who have been granted asylum in the UK, people who've been allowed to stay, will have their status reviewed every 30 months. So what is that, 2.5 years? And refugees whose countries are deemed safe will be expected to return home. Well, we might expect them to return home, but I bet they don't. And are you telling me that all those people on Calais beaches right now waiting to get into the first available dinghy will be going, I was going to get in this small boat and illegally cross the channel and break into Britain so I can be given all the free stuff that they offer us and, leave to stay forever. But now I've discovered that my refugee status will be reviewed every 2.5 years. I'm going to think again. I don't think I will go across. It is just nonsense, isn't it?
Well, when it's a Labour government doing it, and we know what the Labour backbenchers are like, it's very unlikely in any way these measures will see individuals being returned. I think it's important to note that actually most asylum claims are based on very individual circumstances. They're not based on, I'm from X country and X country isn't safe. It's, I've fallen in with the wrong crowd. I can't go back to my village because I annoyed X, Y, or Z people. So they're very, very individualistic circumstances, which are nigh on impossible for a Home Office that won't have a real gung-ho attitude towards actually removing asylum status, likely to extract that status or review in sort of common sense's favour. And these individuals will actually therefore effectively just be fudged through. It'll become a rubber stamping exercise. Although the hope would be in 2029, when we get a centre-right government, the ability to review these cases every 30 months does actually therefore lead to more and more revocations of asylum status, because we have a large number of individuals who have come in over the last 2 decades who, frankly, now the circumstances have changed so much that the basis on which they came here now just simply don't exist. But as you rightly point out, Labour backbenchers won't go anywhere near actually allowing these measures to be used in any meaningful manner. And I think, unfortunately, actually this will be the real problem that Mahmood, despite all the sort of tough talk, will continue to face for the next 3 years.
And for all her tough talk, she, along with most of the high command of our lefty Labour government, does not believe in leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. And as long as we are subordinate to the rulings of the European Court of Human Justice, we can't make our own laws. We can't make our own decisions. They're going to chuck back our decisions in our face, and we'll have to go by what they say. So this Labour government's being in hock to the ECHR means they can never solve this crisis, the tough-talking Home Secretary included.
Yes, I tell you, and she's been saying today that there is no silver bullet to solving this problem, and she may be right, there's not one single action that you can take, but to unlock a whole raft of measures that would help solve this situation, you do need to leave the ECHR, because the number of appeals and fightbacks and sort of clever connivance from left-wing lawyers that we are going to see using the ECHR to challenge any sense of revocation of a refugee status will be, it's almost unfathomable. It will be a huge industry burgeoning as a result of these changes. And I think the fact that actually they've introduced them through fiddling with the immigration rules rather than going through a vote in Parliament as well means that probably there'll be an even greater number of appeals, and the whole thing will end up fundamentally frustrated. So again, I have to say this a lot whenever I'm on your show, but do not trust anything that the Home Secretary really is saying, because it is all smoke and mirrors. It is all designed to give this presentation of, don't worry, we've got it sorted, Governor, it's all right with us. But in reality, actually, things are going to continue to get worse.
Yeah, things can only get worse, to paraphrase Labour's famous slogan. Robert, always great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time. Robert Bates there from the Centre for Migration Control. Here's a quick voice note from Sean on Keir Starmer.
Just been listening to some of what you've said there. Been travelling all day. I'll tell you what I imagine from Starmer. The missiles being launched at Aquaterium British bases, and that Starmer will probably send them a hamper back to from Harrods saying that he apologises for our air bases getting in the way of breaking his missiles.
You're probably right. I wouldn't put it past Starmer. Let's take a quick call. Let's go to Robert in Hertfordshire. Robert, international law, what do you make of it?
Well, listen, I'm old school. I'm an old scrapper back from the old days. I'm 73 now. But the first rule of conflict is there ain't no rules.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
You know, if you have a disagreement with someone in a pub, you go outside and have a straightener. If that guy pulls a bit of wood out, you run round the corner and go and get a bigger bit of wood. Well, it's as simple as that. Yeah, I've got one thing I want to say about Zach Polanski.
I've got a few, but it's a family show, right, you know what I mean?
At the moment, his new best friends are his Muslim chums, okay?
Yeah.
Wait till they want to swing him off a roof for being gay.
Well, yeah, there's that, and there's already an indication that some of the Muslims who voted for Hannah Spencer, the Green candidate in Gorton and Denton, are starting they're starting to realise, oh, hang on a second, these people are crazy about gay rights, trans rights, legalising drugs. So all of a sudden, these Muslims who voted Green are going, oh, hang on, I think we might have made a bit of a mistake here. So you're right, but international law. This is where we're at, Robert. You've got Keir Starmer, Zach Polanski, Jeremy Corbyn, Richard Herman, Mohsin Ali, all sitting around going, oh, we think that international law may have been broken when the Americans and the Israelis attacked Iran. We think they broke the rules. Who the hell cares? It happened. Deal with it.
Was Iran sticking to international law?
No, exactly. They haven't stuck to international law in their life. International law is just it's a joke. It's a joke. It doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't. Robert, good to talk to you. Robert in Hertfordshire there. Let's go to break. When we come back, we're going to get the American view from Trump's former campaign director, Rick Gates, about the disappointment that Trump and millions of Americans are feeling, and millions of Brits, to be honest with you, are feeling about Keir Starmer, his failure to back America and Israel in their attack on Iran. Maybe doesn't have to physically help them, but he could have conceptually supported them like Canada and Australia have. Why can't we do that? We'll talk to Rick Gates, former Trump campaign advisor, after these messages. Stay tuned.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's go straight over to my next guest. He is Donald Trump's former campaign chairman, Rick Gates. Welcome, Rick.
Great to see you, Kevin.
President Trump has expressed his disappointment in our Prime Minister Keir Starmer for not unequivocally supporting America in this endeavour against Iran. Specifically, until yesterday, Britain, or our Prime Minister, had banned America from using our military bases, our RAF bases, to launch strikes on Iran. Yesterday afternoon, he had some kind of Damascene conversion and suddenly said that he would allow America to use our bases in a very limited way, only if they were striking missile storage centres and doing so in a defensive way. So even then, the help that we offered was very limited. President Trump disappointed. I can tell you, Rick, millions of Brits are very disappointed in our Prime Minister as well. We believe, or I speak for millions I know, we believe that in these terrifying times at this particular moment, Britain should be offering our full support to our old and closest ally, the United States of America, and yet we are not. How do you feel about this? How do Americans feel about this?
Yeah, I think it's immensely disappointing. I mean, the UK has been one of our strongest allies and, you know, in many respects remains one of our strongest allies. So I think, Kevin, what this comes down to is you see the true definition of authentic leadership. You see an individual like President Trump, who even in the United States may be upsetting members of his own political party and some of the Republican MAGA base, but he's making the decision because he believes it's the right decision, not necessarily the popular decision. And then you take Keir Starmer, and I think he's absolutely making his decisions based on all the wrong reasons, doing it, you know, basically at the weather bane of what the, you know, people feel in the UK. And I think time will be the best judge of this. You know, we were talking with a number of colleagues from the president's team about go back to July 2015 when Obama made the decision to actually engage with the Iranian regime and to make a nuclear trade deal. And what we've learned since that time about how many instances the Iranians violated that trade agreement and the nuclear agreement. And then you take what Donald Trump is doing and just kind of that decisive leadership. I think over time you are going to see that history will treat this as one of the most pivotal moments in our world history in terms of bringing stability to the globe.
Yeah, and in these moments, it's always good to hitch your wagon to the winner. And we in this country, or thanks to our Prime Minister, Rick, we're not doing that. In fact, the Prime Minister today in our Parliament made this sort of big impassioned speech beginning with, we are not involved in this conflict, making a big point of saying we, Britain, are not in it. He's going out of his way to disassociate himself from America's initiative. And we know why. It's because he cravenly courts the Muslim vote here in Britain. 4 million Muslims live in this country. He lost an election, a by-election last week to the Greens, who courted the Muslim vote. He is not supporting America for domestic reasons, to save his own backside. And I think it's a disgrace to this country. Many of us today, Rick, we're feeling embarrassed, humiliated. We're feeling embarrassed to be British because of our Prime Minister.
Well, look, it is disgraceful, and I, find that history is a harsh judge of people like Keir Starmer. And I would be surprised, whenever the next election is called in the UK, if he has any sort of base of support. And at the end of the day, an issue like this, it drives people to make decisions. And Keir Starmer is not necessarily making the right decisions for the right reasons. And ultimately, that is why I think he will be ousted out of office. But in the meantime, the president over here, he has a long memory, and you can believe that he will certainly remember who came to support him and who didn't. And it is a tragic, episode when the UK, America's strongest ally, is not behind us and not supporting us in this endeavor.
Yeah, and then you've got Mark Carney, hardly Donald Trump Trump's best friend, the Canadian Prime Minister. He has announced his unequivocal support. You've got Australia too, offering unequivocal support, and yet we are not. Where will this... I think President Trump and indeed your great country, the people of your great country, will understand that this is not Britain. This is our Prime Minister. So I suspect that the special relationship will survive this blip because I don't think that Donald Trump will see this as a decision on the part of the British people. He will see it as a decision on the part of our socialist, Muslim-loving Prime Minister. But how does it affect the special relationship at this precise moment, Rick?
Well, look, absolutely, the president loves the people of Great Britain, and that will always remain. And obviously, he has personal and familial ties, to Great Britain. What I think ultimately will happen is that you will see Keir Starmer, one, out of office, but two, in the interim, look, there are still trade deals to negotiate. There are still issues with NATO and the UN, and I think it's going to make it much more difficult for Keir Starmer to govern. Not that he doesn't already have a difficult time, but even more difficult in terms of now coming to the U.S. because we both know, and all the viewers know, that this is governing. You need relationships. You need people. This is not just one issue. But I think Keir Starmer is making an absolute cataclysmic decision on this. He should be backing the U.S., not just the U.S., but he should be backing all of the Western allies on this who believe that Iran is a threat. And just like in the United States, where we have Democrats that believe that this is the wrong decision, a lot of Americans, not Republicans or Democrats, a lot of Americans are pushing back on that mentality. I think you're going to have the same thing in the United Kingdom. A lot of Brits are going to push back on Starmer's position on this, and he should be held accountable for it.
A lot of Brits already are, Rick. I think we know why the president and by Netanyahu launched this joint mission. Iran is the most dangerous regime on the face of the earth. It has been busy for the past month or so slaughtering tens of thousands of its poor citizens who had the temerity to protest against that awful old man, the Ayatollah, no longer with us, thank God. So we know why the president and Netanyahu did it. I wish that Britain had been there with you, but we were not, but so be it. But how do you see this playing out? I mean, if you do, I think you probably will succeed in destroying what's left of the Ayatollah's regime. But what happens then, Rick?
Yeah, look, I think this is an opportunity, for the president, for other countries around the world to now give Iran back to its people. I don't think it's going to be protracted. I think there are going to be calls for the Iranian people to rise up and take their country back. The president doesn't want a long standoff. He's been very decisive in what he's done so far. Says there's more to come. He just gave a speech at the White House a few minutes ago outlining some of the pieces that are still at play. He believes that we're ahead of the schedule that he's outlined, but there are clear objectives they want to achieve because we don't want to be in this position again 5, 10, 15 years from now, just like we talked about with former President Obama in 2015. So I think the president is going to see this through. He's very resolute. He's going to do it with or without support from not only the UK, but other countries around the world, because what he believes he's doing is the right thing for global stability and for people around the world. And he's got a lot of support for it.
What about in America? What's the general feeling? Because, of course, we're hearing that the hardcore MAGA gang are not that thrilled because they don't like foreign wars. They don't like America getting involved in foreign wars. They thought that was very much Donald Trump's worldview, but he appears to have changed his mind on that. So he may have lost some support there. But generally speaking, across America, are Americans behind the president on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Overall, they see the repression and the state of the Iranian regime and what they've done to the people. I mean, you've seen tens of thousands of Iranians killed. And at some point, somebody has to step up and say, enough is enough. We're going to protect innocent, people, women, children, brothers, sisters, mothers, all these types of things that the president, believes in. So, look, at the end of the day, even part of the MAGA base, while on principle, they don't want any war across the world, at the end of the day, they're going to be very supportive supportive of the president elections because they know that he is implementing more of their agenda than anybody else would. So at the end of the day, you're going to have a scenario where you're not going to be, in lockstep with any politician in any country on every issue. But the ones that matter, I think that you're going to see the MAGA-based Republicans and even moderates and independents and even some Democrats that wanted to see the Iranian regime gone are going to be supportive of this president. You'll see that in the midterms as we approach in November.
Rick, fantastic to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. That's Rick Gates there, Donald Trump's former campaign chairman. Extraordinary times, extraordinary times. Let me know what you think about all this. We're going to take lots of calls in the final hour. 0344 499 1000. In case you've been living in a bubble for the last 48 hours or so, the world is at war. Middle East is at war. And the bombs are dropping. It's all out. It's extraordinary, folks. It's extraordinary. What do you think about Britain's reaction to it? We basically have a Prime Minister who's trying to stay out of it. I mean, are we now a nation that allows a foreign country to bomb our air bases, but one of our air bases in Cyprus, and we do nothing? We pretend it was a mistake. They didn't mean it. It was an accident. They were just spraying bombs out anywhere, and one of them two of them just happened to hit a British airbase. One of them actually missed, but the other one did actually hit it. So they were fired directly at our airbase. We're now a country that just goes, OK, that's fine, you can do that. We can't let that happen, can we? 0344 499 1000. When we come back, sports head of content at The Sun, Mike Anstead, will be in the studio to discuss all the sport over the weekend and all the sport coming up. So that next, stay tuned.
The Green Party have won the Denton and Gorton by-election. Labour in third place.
Breaking news that Peter Mandelson has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt.
What would Andrew Loney tell them to do?
To come clean, be honest. And if Charles is complicit in this cover-up, which I believe he is, then I think he has to fall on his sword.
When you define sex, or gender or sex, what you mean is biological sex, and that's a man or woman, what you are physically, not what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Let's talk sport. Mike Anstead, head of sport content at The Sun, is here. Welcome, Mike. Let's talk about Arsenal. Of course, big game yesterday against Chelsea. Chelsea, of course, you always know they're going to get someone sent off, and they did. Jurrien Timber is admitting that the Arsenal players can feel the anxiety at the Emirates Stadium as the title race hits crunch time. They were good yesterday, but they were you could tell they were nervous, couldn't you?
They are nervous. It feels like it's been building for weeks. Let's not forget, we're only in the start of March.
Yeah.
I was watching a game, I felt like about a month ago, and the camera was panning around to all the fans, and they were looking so nervous, so worried, and you think it looked like a match from sort of mid-May, with 2 games to go and win this and we won the Premier League title. You're like, guys, you need to give yourself a break. But clearly what's happened is you need to give the players a break. So Timber's coming out saying, look, we're feeling this. And he's even saying we need to go away and talk about it as players, how we deal with it. So it does show you the fans being anxious about it. So you can't blame them. It's been 22 years. They last time was Invincibles. It's going back a long time now. Liverpool had 30 years, Arsenal had 22, Man United are looking like it could be however long until they win a title. But it clearly doesn't help, and he's admitting it doesn't help. So, I mean, look, they've got Brighton away on Wednesday. Danny Welbeck, one of the informed Premier League strikers, used to play for Arsenal, didn't win the league with Arsenal.
Never a walkover, Brighton.
Exactly, wants to get an England call up at the age of 35. So look, there's going to be, long and short of it is, there's going to be some tougher days ahead. So the fans have got to maybe just ease off it a little bit.
The players, the Arsenal players, all coming on the pitch, fighting their nails. But Chelsea, of course, helped them out really. They were okay at times, but after the sending off, never really stood a chance.
It's almost a given these days at Chelsea. Why
are they such a bunch of petulant children?
I don't know. I mean, it's just so unnecessary. He's been booked a few minutes before for having a little moan at the ref. It's just an absolutely ridiculous challenge out there. I mean, look, I appreciate Martinelli's flying. He could go on score, but he's still 35 yards out on the touchline.
Should have let him go, shouldn't he?
You know you're going to get a yellow card for that. So it's just
it was his second, and off you go.
A couple of red cards, coincidental. If you're up to almost double figures,
it always makes me laugh. And then he was furious. But no, come on, shut. Yeah, if you keep shouting and you keep swearing at the ref, he'll change his mind and let you stay on the pitch, because that always happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They never learn, do they?
And the ref's probably there just saying, walk away, don't get yourself booked. So.
Yeah, exactly. Old Slot, it says the Premiership brings no joy. Liverpool boss says his heart does not like this season's fixation on set-piece football. What does he mean by that?
Well, it's interesting to get a Premier League manager saying, this football's no longer a joy to watch. And so he's talking about the Premier League specifically. And I think this tallies with what a lot of fans say. The Premier League has become so dominated by set pieces, and we know. Look,
would that be like the 4 set piece goals that Liverpool scored against your team, West Ham?
Well, exactly. I think that's.
I know you don't want to talk about it.
No. That's a very, very fair point. Look, he's as guilty as the rest of them. He could just say, "Well, I'm going to rise above it, and I'm going to play beautiful football like Pep Guardiola used to at Man City and Barcelona and all that." But we all can quite clearly see the most effective tactic this season is set pieces. Arsenal have been the best, scored 16 times from corners, 27% of goals come from non-penalty set pieces. So if it's working well for the team at the top of the table, everyone else is probably going to follow suit.
That's a nonsense thing to say, though, because the opposition's job is to defend against that.
Well, exactly.
And if, as I've seen so many times at Fulham this season, the opposition put a corner over and there's a striker there who just nods it straight into the net. You've only got yourself to blame.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting. Slot's had these various moans over the season. Liverpool fans getting a little bit tired of all his moans. He really needs to concentrate on Liverpool playing well, whether that's using set pieces or not, and making sure they finish in the Champions League spot.
I was going to say, he had a famous victory, so why is he moaning? He's just used to moaning.
I'm enjoying that you're calling an absolutely inevitable home win over West Ham as a famous victory. So that's
well, okay, an inevitable victory. Well, you got Fulham, haven't you, on Wednesday? So that'll be an interesting game. Actually, a quick word before we move on to Man United, because I was at Craven Cottage yesterday, and we did comfortably. Well, we should have comfortably beaten Spurs, but we did beat them 2-1. Never mind us. That is bad news for Spurs, wasn't it?
Spurs, it's interesting. So Spurs are in a real pickle, and I've got a number of colleagues downstairs in Sunsport Towers that are Spurs fans. And they've been saying for a few weeks, we're going down. And I'm sitting there going, come on, you're Tottenham, you've got this player, you've got this player, you've got this player, you're Tottenham Hotspur, you won the Europa League, you're in the Champions League. They're like, no, we're going down. That's the first game that made me think, blimey, maybe you're on such a bad run. You're so stuck in a rut. They've got a new manager in who is already having to go at the players, questioning everything. They know he's going to be gone at the end of the season, so are they bought into what he's trying to do? So look, I still think they'll be good enough somehow to get a few wins to get them up. But it's the first time I've really thought, wow, you are in a bit of a pickle.
And they didn't look yesterday like they cared that much. They didn't look committed to the cause. They really didn't.
I just wonder if they don't know what are their roles, what they're supposed to be doing. A new manager comes in, perhaps he hasn't got the best grasp of English, perhaps he's struggling to get his ideas across. I don't believe there's necessarily a player out there who doesn't care, doesn't want to win, but I definitely think you can have players who are not sure what they're being asked for, what they're trying to do. And if you're going out on the pitch with a lack of confidence, perhaps thinking you're already 1-0 down, then that can easily set in quite badly.
They've got some damn good players, and that's the strange thing. You're seeing like 4 or 5 excellent players, and yet they've got no sort of cohesion, no coordination.
If you get the starting lineups for, it's really at the moment Tottenham, Nottingham Forest and West Ham for that final relegation spot, assuming Wolves and Burnley are going to go down as well. If you look at the starting lineups, those 3 teams, when they've got all their players available, Tottenham is by far the strongest lineup out of those 3 clubs. So there's clearly something wrong with the way they're being run from the manager, although the way the players are approaching it, for them to be so far down the table.
And when your team West Ham lose at Craven Cottage on Wednesday, will you be worried then?
I'm quietly confident. Look,
I'll take a draw, mate, don't worry.
Yeah. We'll have a little bet off the side of this, but West Ham are just. If West Ham go down by a narrow margin, they'll look back and think we were so poor the first half of the season. Why did we not do something about it earlier? Because actually, they're playing. Although they got hammered by Liverpool, on the whole they're playing so much better football, a lot more cohesive. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to admit it, but West Ham. They will be fancying their chances at Craven Cottage because, it's not exactly Anfield or Old Trafford. So let's see what happens then. Interesting times. Sesko sleep boosts Man United. £71 million striker has taken flight after drowning out the noise of planes at his home. What does that mean?
So, Benjamin Sesko. I mean,
I like that.
What I'm slightly concerned about with this story, so what I'll explain it first, but it's Benjamin Sesko's basically moved into a house near Manchester Airport when he signed for
hasn't been getting much sleep because of the noise.
All the planes going over. He's been struggling to get some sleep, sleepless nights and all that, and probably his form's been keeping up as well. He's managed to get some double glazing put in, and now that's solved it, and he's sleeping and looks better, and lo and behold, it's led to him being a bit of a better striker. So slightly concerned a £71 million Premier League striker moved into a house with single glazing.
Better house than that.
Exactly. I don't know if he's in student gigs or anything, like student digs or whatever, but he's definitely turned around. He looks a hell of a threat now, Sesko.
Yeah, he certainly does, and maybe if, it looks as if Man United may well make Europe Champions League at the end of the season, and when asked why, Michael Carrick will be able to say, well, it was Sesko's double glazing that done it. There you go. That's your headline.
Absolutely.
Mike Anstead, fantastic stuff. All the sport tomorrow in the Sun. Don't miss it. Next up, we have much still to come. We're going to talk to Nicholas Hopton, former British ambassador.
Over the past 36 hours, the United States and its partners have launched Operation Epic Fury, one of the largest, most complex, most overwhelming military offensives the world has ever seen. Nobody's seen anything like it. We have hit hundreds of targets in Iran, including Revolutionary Guard facilities, Iranian air defense systems. Just now, it was announced that we knocked out 9 ships plus their naval building, all in a matter of literally minutes. Iran's formerly supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is dead.
I spoke to you about the situation in the Gulf and explained that the United Kingdom was not involved in the strikes on Iran. That remains the case. The basis of our decision is the collective self-defense of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. That is in accordance with international law, and we are publishing a summary of our legal advice. We are not joining these strikes, but we will continue with our defensive actions in the region.
Mr Farage, would a reform government have allowed US forces to use UK air bases for offensive operations in Iran?
Yes is the answer to your question. I would have said to the Americans, please do use our bases. We will be supportive of you on this.
There were a series of very loud blasts in the area of Dubai that I'm based in. That's in the Marina area. It's a very touristy area, actually. Those blasts were the loudest we've heard yet, but equally we are reassured that they are most likely the sound of interception by the UAE's quite sophisticated THAAD interception kit. That is the terminal
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. This is the third hour of today's very eventful drive time. We're taking your calls in just a little while. 03444 991 You can WhatsApp voice note us if you like, but it's better to get on the phone. It's good to talk on Talk. Also, towards the end of the hour, we will take in a little royal news with our royal guru, Kinsey Schofield. But for the time being, let's talk about the only story of the day, really, which is, of course, that the Middle East is at war, and the cause of the problem is Iran and the tyrannical regime there. My next guest was the British ambassador to that benighted country, to Iran, from 2017 to 2018. Welcome to the show, Nicholas Hopton. Hello, Nicholas.
Good afternoon.
Well, from your close knowledge of the Iranian people, Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, they say that they've launched this strike. I think they're actually not technically saying they did it deliberately to cause regime change, but they hope it will engender regime change, that the Iranian people, now that the bombs have rained down, the Ayatollah and his inner circle have been killed, that the Iranian people will rise up spontaneously, organically, and claim their country for themselves, and we will proceed onto the sunlit uplands of the future paradise. What are your feelings about that? With your knowledge of the Iranian people, what we've seen over the weekend, will it lead to a spontaneous uprising that will get rid of the last remnants of the Ayatollah's tyrannical regime?
Well, it may well in time do that, but at the moment there's absolutely no sign of it happening. When these strikes were launched, the objectives were clear on the Israeli part. Certainly, they wanted to see regime change. The United States president was at one point, even just a few days ago, talking about the importance of getting a deal. But by Saturday morning, after the launch of the strikes, he was on the same page as Prime Minister Netanyahu, calling for regime change. And then on Saturday evening, obviously, saying to the Iranian people this is their chance to rise up and seize their country. And then with the killing of the supreme leader, Khamenei, that possibly gave an opportunity. People came out, they celebrated in various Iranian cities, but there was no spontaneous uprising. And possibly that window is already closing rapidly because the Iranians have put in place a successor process for naming the next supreme leader of Iran. They've replaced the head of the IRGC, the oppressive military apparatus within the country, which operates overseas as well. So the regime is still standing. The people don't look like rising up. There doesn't yet seem to be any sign of an internal attempt to change the regime for something different, which might be better for the Iranian people. So at this stage, the United States president, President Trump, is in a tricky position. He has a very big call to make, and he needs to make it fairly soon. Does he double down, or does he actually declare victory, say he's already achieved change, and move back to talks and trying to negotiate a deal that suits him?
What is the level, or what was the level of support for the Ayatollah and his regime, and going forward right now in Iran, numerically, percentage-wise, how many of the Iranian people supported the Ayatollah and will continue to support his acolytes?
Well, I think it was a minority. But the regime was deeply unpopular and is deeply unpopular. But it was a significant minority. Very hard to put figures on it, Kevin, but somewhere I would guess between 10 and 20% of the population were actively supporting the regime. The majority of Iranians, at least until recently, and the appalling oppression of the protests in January, which saw thousands, if not tens of thousands, of innocent protesters killed, the majority of Iranians wanted something different, but weren't necessarily willing to go out on the streets and make it happen. And at the moment, they'll be keeping their heads down.
Indeed, and I mean, in essence, I mean, at the moment the regime kind of clings on and is firing out missiles left, right, and centre. So it's looking like a sort of legitimate force right now. But I think we could probably anticipate that before too long, weeks, maybe months, but possibly weeks, that this regime will collapse, creating a vacuum into which what will pour? I mean, what do you see playing out if that happens? If this regime, the remnants of it, if you like, if it does finally collapse, then what happens?
Well, you're right. The regime is dying a death by 1,000 cuts, but it has been for quite some time now, for years. It's been declining, and of course it's run by an aging elite, a bunch of mainly males who are out of touch and unpopular with the population. That said, it's very hard to say when is the final cut. There have been many predictions that this regime was about to end in previous years. You remember the protests of 2022 after the death of Mahsa Amini, the girl killed for not wearing a headscarf.
Yes.
So this may not be so imminent as people are predicting. Equally, it may happen tomorrow. I don't see any signs that it's happening tomorrow. This is a resilient regime. As I say, at this point, there don't seem to be any indications, in fact, that the security forces of the country are about to become disloyal and change the leadership, surrender, if you like. In fact, it is quite possible that this could go on. And the question, Kevin, would be, how long would the West, would the US want to sustain this conflict? The regional partners of the US are suffering a bombardment at the moment. You've seen the hotels on fire in Dubai, the airport, and being attacked. This conflict is escalating. The Straits of Hormuz are effectively closed. The oil price is being impacted. If this goes on for weeks, we will all know about it and destabilize the region. Possibly, if it's not resolved better, it could have a similar effect to what the Iraq War of 2003 had on the region. So I think President Trump has a big call to make. It's far from certain that this particular onslaught by the US and Israel will bring the regime to an end.
Panicking prescient motorists were already beginning to clog up the forecourts over the weekend in Britain ahead of fears over oil prices and petrol shortages. But when you were there, Nicholas, did you ever meet Khamenei? What was he like? What were his acolytes? What were these people like, these old, what we like to call the mad mullahs? What were they like to deal with?
Well, the Supreme Leader himself didn't meet ambassadors, but I was in the same room with him, along with some other ambassadors on more than one occasion. He's a very distant figure. Remote. He was old, of course. He was in his late 80s when he was killed, 87, and he has been sick for many years. He was going to die soon anyway, to be honest. He has gone in a way that obviously has angered his supporters. It's also angered Shia populations in Iraq and Pakistan, as we're seeing. And so I didn't shake his hand. I wouldn't have wanted to, but I did with other senior Iranian figures, including Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister who has been at the center of the negotiations. And obviously he is representing the regime and everything that entails, but he was a professional diplomat. One could talk and engage with him. He was part of a government then which was trying to engage the West rather than isolate the country. I think that there are a significant number of people at the top of the regime who see that as the way forward, including possibly the new temporary supreme leader they've named, Abdulaziz Arifi, another Ayatollah. Clearly, he was close to the last supreme leader, but he's an interesting figure because he's not quite he's not really thought of as a political or security kind of actor. And in fact, he met the last Pope in 2022. So he's obviously someone who speaks very good English and Arabic, someone who can engage internationally. So this is an opportunity, perhaps, if the White House wants to take it, to say, we've changed the regime. It's different now. There's a different leadership. They went over the weekend. So we could try and talk to the new leadership and try and get what we want from them. But that's a choice for the President of the United States.
Can I, I mean, one would hope that the new incumbents in Iran might be a bit more pragmatic than the last ones. But can I play you, this is Keir Starmer only this afternoon in the House of Commons stating Britain's standpoint on all of this, and get your thoughts on it. So this is the Prime Minister earlier today in the Commons.
We are not joining the US and Israeli offensive strikes. The basis for our decision is the collective self-defence of long-standing friends and allies and protecting British lives. It is in accordance with international law, and we've produced a summary of our legal advice which clearly sets this out. We will keep the decision under review. Mr. Speaker, we are not joining the strikes, but we will continue our defensive actions in the region.
So, Nicholas, what's your thought on that? I mean, a lot of Brits are dismayed by it. President Trump says that he's very disappointed in Britain, particularly this kind of strange stance that Starmer took until yesterday afternoon. Oh, you can't use our air bases at all. And then suddenly yesterday afternoon saying, well, you can use them in a very limited way as long as you're only attacking missile storage centres in a defensive way. This has disappointed the president, disappointed Americans, and disappointed a lot of British people. What's your feeling about Keir Starmer's position here?
Well, I think the British government has been caught between a rock and a hard place, essentially. I'm not sure it would have been that different, whoever was in power, to be honest, whichever party, because the UK wasn't consulted in advance. Clearly, we may have been alerted just very briefly before the strikes took place. As far as the UK, our position, along with a majority of countries in the region and in Europe, and you know, we've made this very clear to the US, was that the negotiations should be pursued. So the turn of events will have dismayed the British government, and they perhaps were caught by surprise. It's taken a little while for them to catch up, and I think the Prime Minister is clearly attempting to claw back some of the lost credibility in Washington. Of course, he has to also worry about his own party and many backbenchers who have very strong views on the Bush-Blair war of 2003 in Iraq and how that came about, and wouldn't want to see a repeat of that. And the Prime Minister will be acutely aware of that. As being a lawyer, he will be acutely aware that the legal basis under international law for what the US and Israel have just done is far from clear. That said, he's a political leader. Political leaders need to take political decisions and show political leadership. So perhaps he's trying to claw that back a bit now, and while being very conscious not only of his own party, but the views of many of the people in this country, in the UK, who will not necessarily be so keen to be involved and entangled in another Middle East war.
Last question, Nicholas. Great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on. From your knowledge, I mean, obviously the best case scenario with what's happening over in the Middle East would be that the regime in Iran falls very quickly and is swiftly replaced by, you know, an excellent new administration, and we continue into a new world of fabulous peace. That's pretty unlikely, but that would be the best case scenario. Now, with your knowledge of how well militarily stocked Iran is, because I think that's what all of this hinges on, is how long can they continue firing out these missiles? How long can they continue to at least maintain a kind of position of being a proper country fighting a war? I mean, if they run out of weapons, I suppose it all begins to end. But in in that respect, how long can Iran carry on fighting, do you think?
Well, the first thing to say is I think the scenario where there's a smooth transition rapidly to a Western-friendly, more democratic government in Iran seems quite a long way away.
I agree.
Quite hard to see how we get there rapidly. There doesn't seem to be an end game plan in Washington, at least not one that is being made or shared publicly, and there does need to be a plan for how this thing ends. Now, I think Iran's military capabilities are far inferior to what the US and Israel can throw at them and have. And obviously, in a long war, there's no competition. It's very difficult to estimate how long Iran can sustain its retaliation. It's doing its very best at the moment to inflict as much pain on the US by targeting its allies, who it hopes will then put pressure on Washington. And that is why the ongoing onslaught on the Gulf countries is taking place, and the disruption to the global economy, which will damage over time, will damage not only Iranian and Gulf interests, but also Western powers, including the United States economy. So the Iranians seem to be not ready to go for talks either. They are doubling down. They're playing this in a different way from the June 12-day war with Israel, when they threw vast amounts of missiles and drones at Israel in a short period of time. They're doing it in a much more staggered way. They've devolved their centers of military decision-making around the country, so they're not easy to just decapitate with one or two commanders being taken out. And I think it's possible, certainly they can keep going for days. Whether they could sustain this for weeks is doubtful. At the same time, as I said earlier, there's no sign at this point that the regime is on the point of collapse. And there must also be doubts about the appetite of the American people for being engaged in a prolonged war in the Middle East.
Nicholas, excellent to have you on the show. Please come on again. Nicholas Hopton, the former British ambassador to Iran from 2017 to 2018, with the inside view, if you like. You know, I think this hinges in terms of the actual sort of military conflict we're seeing at the moment. It's a question of how many weapons, how long can Iran carry on firing them out left, right and centre, which is what it's doing at the moment. When it runs out, then what happens? Presumably they then collapse, but how long will that take? I mean, it's all up in the air, folks, and God knows what happens when the regime does collapse. In fact, if it collapses, there are a lot of unknowns out there. 0344 499 1000, and indeed we will take your calls after this break. Get on the phone, let's talk. It's good to talk on Talk.
The Green Party have won the Denton and Gorton by-election. Labour in third place.
Breaking news that Peter Mandelson has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt.
What would Andrew Loney tell them to do?
To come clean, be honest. And if Charles is complicit in this cover-up, which I believe he is, then I think he has to fall on his sword.
When you define sex, or gender or sex, what you mean is biological sex, and that's a man or woman, what you are physically, not what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Your calls and your WhatsApp voice notes. Here is a WhatsApp voice note. This is from Keith on the situation in the Middle East.
One of the biggest things I've heard, or most frequent things I've heard from politicians, from talk radio, from everybody, is what's the plan? And nobody's got a plan. I've got absolutely no doubt in my mind that there is a plan, right? It has been decided for a country like Israel and a country like America to target the Ayatollah and get him and 40 of his cronies at one point, at one place. They had so much information. They potentially even created the meeting that got them there. That's what some people are saying. Now, if you think they haven't got a plan, you've got another thing coming. At the end of the day, they ain't calling Kevin, they ain't calling Julia, they ain't calling Kia. They're more likely to call you, Kevin. The fact is, they ain't telling anybody what their plan is, and nor should they. But you will see that in a week, this will be finished, and the world will be a safer place.
Well, Keith, really good voice note, and I admire your optimism, and I hope you're right. I don't suppose they will be calling me before Keir Starmer, but without blowing my own trumpet too much, because it's setting the bar pretty low, I'd be a better person to call than Starmer, that's for damn sure. Not that I'd be any good at all. Yeah, you know, let's see. In a week's time, it'll all be over. They got a plan in place. That's what they said after Iraq, wasn't it? You know, that's what they said after Libya. We've got a plan in place. They never do. They topple these regimes, which is kind of good, and then they don't know what to do. These regimes are replaced by chaos, by mad mosaics, by vacuums of hell. So let's hope that Keith is right. But if he's wrong, then there are bad times ahead. I think it's good to get rid of this awful Ayatollah. Awful old man and his awful acolytes and his terrible regime, his repressive regime. I think it's great to get rid of them. But I wonder what's coming down the track, what will be next. Let's talk to Elizabeth in Chorley. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hello.
What do you feel about Keir Starmer and his strange neutral, sitting on the fence position?
Yes. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, I am too.
I'm totally embarrassed. And I'm 60 years old, and I remember the Shah falling in Iran, 1979. I was 12.
Right.
And I remember President Ronald Reagan getting the American hostages out of there, and then the whole thing fell. And we had Ayatollah Khomeini, not Khamenei, Khomeini.
Yeah, I mean, they all seem to be called almost the same thing, don't they? They put an A here, an O there. They need to sort of, like, vary up their names a bit, these Ayatollahs, don't you think?
What happened to all the people in Iran? They were all under the same regime of the Islamic regime.
Yeah.
Of killing people who don't agree with you, killing women who don't have a headdress on, hanging young men from a lamppost. And guess what? We had actually mainstream British politicians out on the streets of London this weekend supporting that regime.
Yeah, the deputy leader of the Green Party, Mohsin Ali, was out there actually mourning the demise of that awful old creep, the Ayatollah. Jeremy Corbyn, of course, as ever. And Zach Polanski, you know, saying that we should be condemning Trump for this.
Who are these people?
Well, they're the representatives of Her Majesty's left-wing British opposition.
Well,
Elizabeth.
I'm afraid they're not. They're They're not.
See what I said? They're Her Majesties. I meant His Majesties.
British.
Yeah. Do you think that Starmer, in his strange approach, his neutral approach to what's going on in the Middle East and Iran, is basically worried about the Muslim vote back here in Britain?
Yes. So he'll actually prostitute himself for the Muslim vote.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
A load of Muslims in Iran will be murdered.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, Elizabeth, that what happened last week in Gorton and Denton, the result of that by-election in which the Greens won it on a Muslim vote, is already affecting British foreign policy. This is why Keir Starmer is so reticent to get involved, so reticent and reluctant to offer his support to America, which I find embarrassing and humiliating. But I think he's worried about the Greens, he's worried about the Muslim vote back here, which is a disgrace.
Well, what does it boil down to? He's only worried about his own standing as Prime
Minister. Yeah, he's worried about himself. He's trying to save his own professional backside, I agree.
We want him to go.
Yeah, we do, yeah. I think we might have to wait till May, but after that he'll be gone, Elizabeth. I'm with you all the way. I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for an excellent call. Elizabeth in Chorley there. Let's go to Matthew in Warrington. Hello, Matthew.
Hello, Kevin. Well, firstly, I've got to say, talk today from 6 o'clock this morning to now have been outstanding with the coverage of it.
Thank you. Well,
honestly, every single one of you and all your staff, the effort you put in the news, it's been non-biased, it's been right down the middle, and it's been honest and truthful, unlike the mainstream. So, brilliant job from you all today.
Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate that.
Keir Starmer is just showing us all what a traitor he is. He's going to make this country more diverse by his actions, because everyone now is seeing him for what he is. The Muslims are going to go, oh, okay, yeah, and us British people are going, hang on a minute, where's our standing in the world? We've just lost our biggest ally in the United States. You think Trump is going to do anything for us? He's going to screw us over.
Well, no, he said, Matthew, he said today that he's very disappointed in Keir Starmer and Britain's stance. I find it embarrassing, and I think Keir Starmer he's a moral coward. I mean, this is a situation, to my mind, you know, like Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, can't stand Donald Trump. Wouldn't care if he died tomorrow. However, Mark Carney's come right out of the traps and offered Canada's unequivocal support to America in its initiative against Iran. So has Australia, another country that doesn't exactly love Trump. But here we are in Britain with a Prime Minister who won't support our oldest, closest ally, the special relationship apparently counting for nothing. I think it's a disgrace.
He stands at that dispatch box today and he was shaking like a crapping dog. He was... He was. Did you see him? He couldn't even look at anyone in the eye.
And yesterday, I'm really glad you brought that up, Matthew. I was saying it in the office. Look at this guy. Did you see him over the weekend? Did you see him yesterday when he changed his mind about letting America use our air bases? And today in the Commons, he looks like a frightened fox caught in the headlights, doesn't he?
He doesn't know which way to turn, because he's getting it from his politicians. He's getting it from the other side, all the rest of us, because he's absolutely useless. He's a jellyfish. He's got no backbone. If he just stood up and said, you know what, I'm going to support America, we need to sort this out. But he can't stand up there and go, I'm not going to let you use our airbase. And next, oh, okay, then, Mr. Trump. He's just useless. He's so weak. So what are they going to do? Let Argentina look and go, you know what, now's a good time to go and get the Falklands again, because he'd all...
Yeah, okay. It's a good idea. If Argentina fancy getting their hands on the Malvinas, or Falklands Islands, now's the time, because Trump will just let them. He's already given away Gibraltar, and now's doing nothing to stand by our ally America as they strike against the most dangerous regime on the face of the earth, Iran. It's humiliating, I think, for this country. Matthew, great call. Matthew in Warrington there. Let me read a couple of messages. This is from Joanna in Salisbury. She says there isn't a plan for Iran. Trump already said they would take out the Ayatollah and the regime to ready themselves to take over. Does that sound like a plan? I don't know. I mean, who knows what the plan is? I mean, I don't think that America and Israel went in there just thinking, well, let's take out the Ayatollah, let's launch an attack and see what happens. I mean, they've got a plan, but whether or not it's tight enough or or too loose or whether or not it comes off, who knows? We're already entering unknown territory. Danny says, I note that Starmer says the USA will have the weapons to remove launchers to protect Cyprus, but no bombers can use the Cyprus base. Yeah, it doesn't make much sense. And, my point, as I keep saying, are we now a country? Iran fired 2 missiles at our sovereign airbase, our RAF airbase in Cyprus. 2. One of them was a direct hit. The other one mercifully missed. They fired 2 missiles at us, at Britain. And Starmer just seems to expect that we are going to accept that he's going to do nothing. He sends his Defence Secretary, John Healey, onto television to say, we think it was a mistake, a bit of an accident. You know, they're firing weapons anywhere. They don't know where they're going. And 2 of them, oh, my, would you believe it? They turned up at a British airbase. No, John, we were directly targeted, obviously. Are we just going to let that happen? 03444 99 1000. Linda in Walmer in Kent says, international law is the excuse these pathetic, corrupt idiots use so they don't have to act in this country's interest. The sea is like a mill pond, so the invasion will be ramped up this week. She's talking about the migrant crisis. I am told that tomorrow hundreds will come across. I told you last week that there would be a big invasion on at least one day last week, and I was right. 605. Was it Wednesday? Was it Thursday? Well, I think it was Wednesday. Let's, before we go back to the phones, quick voice note from Michael on Keir Starmer.
Watching Starmer make his speech, the man is terrified. He's terrified of the 10,000 plus terrorists on the watch list in this country and the millions, and I mean millions, of terrorist sympathisers that if we take part, things will spark off. You wait and see. That's what he's worried about because he cannot contain something like that.
Yeah, my worry is we're going to be sitting on the sidelines while Keir Starmer's going to international law and we can allow them to use our air bases in a very limited way. And, you know, all hell is breaking loose. And Britain is just a sort of bystander, a spectator, you know, having no input into this international conflict that is escalating fast. That's what worries me. He's reduced us to a bystander in important international events. We didn't used to be that. Now, you know, we're like Tonga or something, some country that doesn't really matter. How did we get to this point? How did he manage this Prime Minister of ours? As I said earlier, how did we get from we will fight them on the beaches from Winston Churchill at the beginning of the Second World War to we're not involved in this contract, international law must be absolute. How did we get to that point? How did we sink so low? 0344 499 1000. Let's go to break. When we come back, we'll take a break from the problems in the Middle East, the war in the Middle East, the all-out war there, and we'll talk about the royal family with the host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered, Kinsey Schofield, over there on the west coast of America. That next. Stay tuned.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Well, let's go straight up. We're going to talk about the royal family. What the hell? It's about time we talked about something else apart from the extremely worrying situation in the Middle East. Hope you don't mind, but I think we all need a bit of a holiday from that. So let's talk about the royal family with the excellent Kinsey Schofield, our royal guru over there on the West Coast, the host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered. Welcome, Kins.
Hi, Kev. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Now, we're hearing over the weekend that everyone is now, or in the royal circle, is now ostracising princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, the daughters, of course, of Andy and Fergie. This is a change of position on the part of the royal family, because initially the king said it's not their fault. They should be still included in royal events. They should be still welcomed into the bosom of the royal family. But more and more evidence is emerging that Bea and Eugenie were not exactly innocent of their parents' nefarious activities, particularly involving their close financial relationship with the billionaire paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Harry and Meghan in particular were offering their support to Bea and Eugenie. We're hearing that has been removed. They are not backing Bea and Eugenie anymore, nor are William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales. They're particularly cold towards these two girls, and now we know that the king has let it be known to them they will not be welcome at Ascot this year, where they usually they often join the king in his carriage to go around the track before the actual races begin, and in fact they will not be welcome at royal events going forward. So the worm is turning for the princesses, the pariah princesses.
I mean, I think that these are the consequences of a DOJ dump where we discovered that you voluntarily went to spend time with a convicted sex offender right after he got out of jail. But what I think is interesting about this story that I saw in the Daily Mail is that they say in November, the York women turned down Prince William's suggestion to allow an ethics check to be carried out about their personal investments. They say that's really when Prince William started to be concerned about their presence. William believed that potentially they might have involuntarily been involved with some of their father and mother's shady business people, and he wanted to protect them by offering them this ethics check to be ahead of any sort of scandal that could come to fruition. And they, according to the Daily Mail, refused that opportunity. And so someone said in the magazine or in the paper that the palace is acutely aware that Andrew and his business friends, they acted as Beatrice and Eugenie's financial advisors, and no one is quite sure what might be that everything's entirely above board. So, yes, the DOJ dump, I think, is the climax, but we understand that William was trying to protect them, or at least trying to have a better understanding of what all could be on the horizon last year when they started to strip Andrew of his titles and things started to really shift.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's really all going on now at Royal City, because we're hearing, you know, this is sort of difficult, but, you know, Andrew is still a human being. And let's face it, he suffered a lot in the last. It's his own fault, but he has suffered one hell of a lot in the last year. We've heard down the line that he's sort of in denial, still obsessing on where he parks his car and whether or not he can ride his horses and have shooting weekends and all that sort of nonsense. Not quite somehow confronting the horrendous nature of his predicament. But we are also now hearing, Andrew Lowney saying this morning, that in fact this whole saga has taken a terrible toll on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and that he is now on suicide watch. So far be it from us to shed tears about this guy. It's his own fault. But there may be fears for his mental health now.
From a moral standpoint, we should be concerned about that. From a personal empathy, compassion standpoint, we should be concerned about that. From a legal standpoint, Andrew's mental health is irrelevant unless he was in a frazzled mental state when he continuously communicated with Jeffrey Epstein, when he continued to communicate with Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted of being a sex offender, when he lied about his communication with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, from a legal standpoint, his mental health is only relevant today regarding whether or not he could stand a trial. From a personal standpoint, yes, we should show empathy and compassion. But if we look at this clearly from a consequences standpoint and a justice standpoint, his mental health is irrelevant unless it's regarding his ability to stand trial or his current mental health when he was allegedly forwarding secret information, government information, to someone that had no business receiving it.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, nobody would wish suicidal thoughts on anyone, and if his mental health is collapsing, then that is a genuine source of concern. But let's not ever forget that he brought this on himself. He's only got himself to blame.
And let's not forget Virginia Giuffre, who is no longer with us.
Who took her own life after accusing Andrew of sexually abusing her on 3 different continents. He denied it, gave her £12 million to keep her mouth shut, not go to a civil court in New York. I don't know why he bothered to give her that money, because nobody believes his denial. Nobody believes a word of his denial. So it was money straight down the drain. Let's talk about Harry and Meghan. Now, given what's going on in the Middle East, only this time last week they were pitching up in Jordan. Thank God they got the hell out of there before all hell broke loose this weekend. But them going to Jordan, to this region, to the Middle East, unofficially, pretending to be a royal tour. I mean, what's happening now puts that into sharp focus. The sheer scale of the irresponsibility of this couple who just say, oh, let's pretend to be the king and queen. Let's go to Jordan. No, don't do this anymore. The Foreign Office here, our Foreign Office department, saying that they were not invited to our embassy. They turned up at an embassy party in Jordan. They were not invited to be there in the first place. This is absolutely internationally irresponsible on the part of Harry and Meghan, that they decide they're the king and queen and pitch up in whatever country they fancy. It's got to stop.
Yeah. And Israel's deputy foreign minister hit out at Harry right after some of the comments he made on Channel 4 when he did that very awkward interview where the journalist keeps bringing up Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, and Harry's like looking around frantically looking for the WHO guy to save him. Yeah. But the deputy foreign minister of Israel said that Harry's claims during that Channel 4 interview about humanitarian corridors being shut down were deeply disappointing and amplifying a false narrative. I mean, to your point, this is why titles matter. When Harry speaks on a volatile geopolitical issue like humanitarian corridors in Gaza, he's not perceived as a private citizen. He's not perceived as an American. He's perceived as the Duke of Sussex, a member of the British royal family. That creates diplomatic consequences. These are matters negotiated between governments, not celebrities on humanitarian PR tours. You know, if Israel's deputy foreign minister is publicly correcting him and saying, come look for yourself, that tells you that he has stepped into territory that is well above his pay grade. This is the same guy that wrote a book about his frozen Todger. I don't see his value on, huge issues like this. The British monarchy survives on neutrality. when a titled royal appears to amplify disputed claims in an active war zone, it places Buckingham Palace in an impossible position. This is why working royals don't freelance foreign policy.
Exactly. I mean, the king doesn't say, you know what, I fancy visiting Canada. Hey, Camilla, pack your bag. Let's nip over to Montreal, lovely city. It doesn't go like that. Years of planning goes into these visits. They are very diplomatic. They are at the heart of international relations, Britain's relationship with the rest of the world and other countries. And these two idiots from Montecito, Harry and Meghan, don't seem to understand this. They just go, oh, let's go to Jordan. Let's go to Nigeria. Let's go to Colombia. Yeah, we can pretend we're royals. It's just ludicrous. And it's dangerous. It's dangerous, Kinsey.
They don't vet the people that they associate with. Do you remember in Nigeria when Harry had his picture taken with like not one, but two people that were removed from the United States for scams? Like they were kicked out of the United States for scams. Yeah. For financial scams.
In Jordan, they were alleged to have sort of mixed with people who belong to Hamas. So, you know, you're right. I mean, they can't carry on doing this. It's got to stop. It was absolutely absurd. But, of course, Meghan loves it, doesn't she? So she can pretend she's Princess Diana when she gets there, striking or Catherine.
I was going to say, or Catherine, sleeping on the same mattress Catherine sleeps on whenever she visits, insisting to get the same hotel suite that William and
You're kidding. I didn't know that bit.
Yes, I wonder if she's demanded the exact same pillow that Catherine sleeps on every night, because we know she's on the same mattress. It's so bizarre. And then let's talk about the security. I mean, you just said it yourself. Had they left out, hours, a day later or so, if their plans would have been to leave then, they would be stuck there. Mr. Rabbit, if I don't get my way, it's because Daddy stepped in and said I shouldn't have the proper security that I deserve because I was born a prince. Going to Colombia, Nigeria, and Jordan. You are going, and Ukraine, you go to these places, you hypocrite, to try to justify this security. But the reality is, again, back to Frozen Todger, you're a reality star at this point. Yep. He just pursues these dangerous venues to try to justify the security he wants. But it's not like people in Jordan or Ukraine or Colombia or Nigeria are begging for Harry and Meghan to live or represent them or be there. Like, he pursues these things to try to justify his wants.
And in Jordan, they turned up. Imagine throwing a party, as our ambassador, the British ambassador in Jordan, did. Threw a party for local dignitaries. And Harry and Meghan crashed the party. Imagine throwing a party going, oh my God, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have just gate crashed. That's what they did.
Kris Jenner knows all about it. Kris Jenner knows all about it.
Yeah, and yes, sure. Then they tried to use their attendance at this party to say, look, our visit was official. It was not. It was not official. It was a disgrace, and they've got to stop doing this. You're so right. I mean, they don't know, Jack, they don't know anything. They could be there now. And if they had gone this week, they'd be stuck there. And imagine the international diplomatic mess that would have caused. Unbelievable. Kinsey, great to talk to you. Sorry it was so brief, but a lot going on. We'll talk again on Thursday. Kinsey Schofield, host of Kinsey Schofield Unfiltered there. When we come back, we'll finish the show with more of your calls and more of your messages. So that next, and then Peter Carboll will be in towards 7 o'clock to tell you what he's got lined up for your entertainment from 7 p.m. until 10 p.m. So much still to come. Stick around.
The Green Party have won the Denton and Gorton by-election. Labour in third place.
Breaking news that Peter Mandelson has now been arrested. So Mandy and Andy have now both had their collars felt.
What would Andrew Loney tell them to do?
To come clean, be honest. And if Charles is complicit in this cover-up, which I believe he is, then I think he has to fall on his sword.
When you define sex, what your gender or sex, what you mean is biological sex, and that's a man or woman, what you are physically, not what you think you are on a Wednesday afternoon.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Quick message here from, this is Martin. He says, the word you're looking for, re Trump, I was saying, you know, the comparison between Donald Trump and Keir Starmer. Martin says the word you're looking for in terms of Trump is conviction. He's got conviction. And our Prime Minister certainly doesn't have that. Should be convicted, but he doesn't have any conviction at all. Let's listen to a quick voice note. This is Dave on Iran.
Isn't it amazing that this pariah state of terror in the Middle East is still in the UN? And there are offensive comments about wanting to get rid of Israel, who also in the UN. It just shows you the UN is not fit for purpose.
Yeah, UN's a waste of time. United Nations, absolute waste of time. What's that bloke? Antonio Guterres, some sort of lefty, lunatic, communist Portuguese guy who runs it. He's just, you know, before October the 7th, the United Nations was passing on average about 12 condemnations of Israel every single week. It's a pathetic, useless organisation, waste of space. Here's another voice note. This is Susie on Starmer.
I believe the reason that Starmer is not wanting to go on the offence is simply because he knows that he won't be able to accuse them of war crimes after he's left office. In my opinion, he is a weak, arrogant and incompetent little man, and he's an absolute traitor to this country.
I don't think many people would disagree with you there, Susie. Well said. Let's go to Bournemouth and talk to Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Kevin.
What would you like to say? Starmer's speech. You were impressed, were you?
Oh, yeah, it was wonderful. Emotion and, you know, integrity.
Yeah, Churchillian, yeah.
Yeah, more the chill than the church, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But, yeah, first thing is, there's no way they are planning to prescribe the IRGC, because when he was asked about it as part of a question about other things...
It's incredible, isn't it? It's incredible. They still won't do it. And the Ayatollah's office is still open. We are still, as a country, Britain, still ostensibly supporting Iran, officially and diplomatically. Ridiculous.
Yeah, plus the fact that he was very insulting to Isabel Oakeshott.
Oh, that was... well, no, that was Ed Davey. That was that was the Lib Dem leader. As I said to Isabel, take a bow. That's a badge of honour, that is. Anybody who gets insulted by Ed Davey has got my vote, 100%. Ed Davey's a complete cretin. But yeah, I mean, this guy...
He also admitted that he hadn't even looked at Lord Wilson's report.
I know. The guy's not... He's in the wrong job and he's got to go. He's got to go as fast as he can. Karen, listen, I've got to go now because the show's nearly over, but thank you for calling. Call me tomorrow. Quick last call. Jill in Cornwall. Hello, Jill.
Hi, Kevin. How are you? All
I'm
right?
OK. What would you like to say about the ongoing catastrophe unfolding before our very eyes?
Well, the fact that we've got Keir Starmer that is supposedly running this country, I am so worried about what will happen to the people of this country if he stays in power. I honestly, for him to stand there in Parliament and say that he's done this for the safety of the people of this country.
He's done this to protect his own political backside.
Yeah,
it's as simple as that. And that is terrifying because there are more important things than his survival, because he's not going to survive for a kick-off.
Well, I can think of so many things that I would love to see him do that would not help him survive.
But he won't. He won't. He'll be gone in May. He'll be gone in May, Jill. Listen, Jill, I've got to move on because the show's almost over. Give me a call tomorrow. Let's have a proper chat. But always good to talk to you. Thank you very much, Jill in Cornwall. Peter Cardwell is in the studio. Anything going on?
Yeah, it's pretty quiet today, apart from day 3 of the Iran war. Yeah, exactly. So we'll reflect on it from all angles: from the British angle, from the American angle, from the Lebanese angle, from the Iranian angle, from the Israeli angle. There's so many different bits of this.
Massive explosion just now in Lebanon.
Yeah, so it's going on all the time. We'll talk to Colonel Richard Kemp, the former British Army commander. We'll talk to American guests, Iranian guests. Mark Francois, the Shadow Defence Minister, is going to join us. The economy angle as well. What does this mean for the price of petrol, for oil going around the world?
I was saying earlier that there were significant queues forming at petrol forecourts around Britain this weekend. Prescient motorists seeing trouble ahead.
Well, absolutely. I'm also going to speak to a former Iranian political prisoner. She's going to tell us what happened to her and what her fears are for political prisoners now. Could they actually just be killed because